Okay, good evening. Today is Thursday, April 10th, 2025. This is the Haverford Township Planning Commission meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we will begin with a roll call. So we have Mr. Channon.
Here.
Mr. Capuzzi.
Here.
Mr. Welsh.
Here.
Mr. Montresor.
Here.
Ms. Juice, sorry. Totally forgetting. Here. Thank you. And Mr. Cortese. Here. All right, very good. I'd like to invite everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, our first order of business tonight is a conditional use application by St. Faith Equity LLC, representing with Wonder Spring. This is located at 1208 Alston Road. So I will just inform for the Planning Commission and our audience here, conditional use applications are heard by the commissioners. Under the zoning ordinance, though, the Planning Commission has to make a recommendation to the governing body on that. So we do have an obligation then to review the application and provide feedback. And I believe, Jamie, you said that hearing is scheduled for May 8th?
May 5th.
May 5th, I'm sorry, thank you. So May 5th is the scheduled date for the conditional use hearing before the Board of Commissioners. What time is that?
It'll be before the work session that evening, so 6:15 or 6:30 p.m.
Okay.
Usually it's 6:15.
Okay, and that will be advertised if anybody is interested in coming to the hearing. All right, so we have the applicant, St. Faith Equity LLC, and Wonder Spring seeks conditional use approval to permit a combination of uses, including nursery school, kindergarten, elementary school enrichment, summer camp, and associated education recreation. So tonight we're going to hear the application, and Planning Commission will have the opportunity to ask questions and make any recommendations to the board. So I'd like to invite the applicant, please, to the podium to introduce yourselves and provide an overview of your application. Oh, I'm sorry. So I also just want to say before we get started, just a matter of advertisement. So in my professional life, I serve as the Narberth Borough Manager. Wonder Spring is actually a tenant of the boroughs. So the borough owns a property in which the applicant, Wonder Spring, is an active tenant. So I do have some level of relationship with the applicant. I did speak with our township solicitor, though, who said that there should be no conflict of interest. And in my capacity as chair of the Planning Commission and in my professional life, I do believe that I can maintain a level of impartiality to review this separate from the relationship with Wonder Spring as a tenant of the borough for whom I work. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, commissioners. So I am Brandon Savrin. I'm a land use lawyer with Dilworth Paxson, and I am here tonight to represent the applicant, who is the property owner, St. Faith Equity LLC. Before I begin, let me just say that as part of our application, since the township does not maintain a template or a form for a conditional use application, we drafted and submitted what most would call proposed findings of fact and conclusions of law, with about 50-some pages of exhibits attached to them. And Jamie, thank you for working with me to get them digitized here. I am not planning on walking through all of those findings and conclusions which constitute the application, and I'm really not even planning on walking through the exhibits, but do know that there are photographs of the property inside and out, floor plans, and plans, and I'll touch on those a little bit, but to the extent you have questions and either you or I think that those images can inform the answers, I have them numbered and I'll pull them up according to page number. So thanks for letting me kind of start with that preamble, and now I'll really get into it. So we are here seeking a conditional use approval under section 182-602 of the zoning code to operate an educational institution, which is a conditional use in the property's INS zoning district. Your chairwoman just went into good detail there on really specifically what activities will occur on the property, and we'll expand on that greatly here. But the term that encapsulates those activities in the zoning ordinance and the term under which we've applied is educational institution. That is not a defined term by the zoning ordinance, but there's a great deal of case law that explains what an educational institution is, and we feel that we fit into it. So with me tonight is Doug Martindale. Doug is the principal. I'll call you up in 1 second, Doug. Doug's really ready to go. Doug is the principal of St. Faith Equity, LLC. And in a moment, I'll have Doug introduce himself and talk about how through the LLC he came to own this property and how he helped to orchestrate the transition of the St. Faith Episcopal congregation's own preschool to continue to exist on the property when the religious activity had ceased. That was sort of the first transition. And then the second transition in 2023 was from that preschool without the church to Wonderspring, who is the current operator of the preschool there and Doug's tenant. There really are two reasons before I bring Doug up that drove us to make this conditional use application. So the first is that the township approached us and let us know that like many churches and former churches in Greater Philadelphia, this property is not ever believed to have had a use permit of any kind. And the township would like us to get on the record, so to speak, and declare what we are and obtain a permit. So that's reason one. Reason two is that we would like to, as part of this process, state very explicitly what Wonderspring's activities have been to this point over the past 2 years and what they're going to be going forward. And by putting that on the record, essentially obtain the township's blessing to operate in that specific manner. So there's no ambiguities about what's going on the property. So with that, Doug, now we're ready for you. Come on up and introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. Just a brief, quick background on the property. I'm a township resident out of the Coopertown neighborhood. I've lived in Haverford Township for the last 25 years. I don't know if anybody here is familiar with St. Faith or maybe attended it themselves. It's been sort of a fixture as part of the community for a very long time. And I was fortunate enough to have my children, who are now 12 and 14, attended St. Faith and successfully, and it was a great experience. In around 2018, I was approached by Kelly Garrison, who was the executive director of St. Faith Preschool and Kindergarten at that time. She had been leasing the space from the Episcopal diocese and knew of my background and interest in real estate and was basically just very kind of given an ultimatum. She either had to acquire the property or the Episcopal diocese was going to sell it. Essentially, I joined with her and we was able to put together the funding to acquire the building from the diocese, and she was able to essentially took over the lease that Kelly had as St. Faith Preschool and Kindergarten that was operating. Again, that occurred in 2019. As a little bit of background on myself, I also joined the board of directors of St. Faith Preschool and Kindergarten. Additionally, for the last 10 years, I've actually been on the board of directors of Wonderspring. I'm currently the vice president on the board of directors for that educational institute. Then COVID hit, and obviously enrollment numbers had dwindled, and we were dealing with the issues that were going on with that and the financial issues. And then towards the end of 2022, as my role on St. Faith Preschool and Kindergarten, it was the next, like, we were basically in financial dire straits again. Based on my relationship with Wonderspring, and we operate in multiple communities throughout the southeastern Pennsylvania, I organized the merger essentially for Wonderspring to take over St. Faith Preschool and Kindergarten's operations as well as the existing staff. And we were able to do that and essentially move in, and that was finalized in the middle of 2023. And since then, Wonderspring's been a great tenant, and they've provided, we've been able to make a lot of improvements to the property to ensure that it stays within the community. And this was one of my sort of pet projects in the sense that my kids went there. This was very important to me and my wife and my family. And that's why we've stayed with this building and wanted to remain for as long as humanly possible in the township as a preschool and kindergarten and recreational area. And that's kind of the backstory. I hope that helped a little bit, and you can jump back in.
Thanks, Doug. So what I'll do just for a few more minutes is give a little bit more information about, what Wonderspring does at this location. I'll let you know that also with me is Zakiya Boone, who is the CEO of Wonderspring. So to the extent, I don't fill a gap of information that you're looking for about this preschool, I can almost promise you she has it, and I'll bring her up to answer your questions. So as I said, there's 10 locations in Greater Philadelphia. This location, as of now, has roughly 45 students and a dozen teachers and staff members. There are 11 classrooms, and if you were to look at the floor plan, those classrooms, I think with the exception of one, are at the ground level and in the partially below ground basement. Then there's one classroom on the second floor. There's several indoor and outdoor play spaces and meeting rooms. There's a very large indoor one in the basement. And then on the first floor, there's a gymnasium with basketball hoops. And I'll touch on that in one moment. Skip ahead here a little. A couple of years ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, the township restricted parking on our side of Alston, which has been really helpful because nobody can park on our side of the curb for more than 15 minutes at a time. So what that has essentially done is keep the space open for pickup and drop-offs. We also have parallel parking on Brookline, the other side of our corner, which is not timed in that manner, so that's regular parking. And the municipal parking lot that you're all aware of on Brookline, down towards the commercial district, is about 1/8 of a mile away. So it's not 2 seconds away, but it's within a comfortable walking distance. Currently, Wonderspring serves children from 2 to 6 years old. So for the 2 to 5-year-olds, and that would be, what at many preschools would be called the 2s through pre-K, including early care and late care, a child can attend school from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. And then separately, on a very different schedule, there's a kindergarten enrichment program. So that would be children ages 5 to 6, and they attend kindergarten half day at a public school and basically come to Wonderspring to fill out the other half of the day. Now that's roughly a model for how Wonderspring would like to expand upwards in age to serve elementary school aged children. So obviously if you're in 1st through 5th grade and you go to a Haverford School District school, you're going to have a full day of school. So this would be programming that is available for 6 to 10-year-olds after school is finished, they could be bused or obtain other transportation to this Wonder Spring location and be there until closing time. I think it's also thought that we could have early day care for the elementary schoolers in the same way. Wonder Spring is licensed by the Pennsylvania Departments of Education, Health and Human Services, and also operates a summer camp, which we can have Zakiya answer more questions about if you have them. We would consider the summer camp to be an accessory use under the zoning code, meaning that it's the sort of offering that a reasonable person, and that's sort of the standard that the code uses per state law, a reasonable person would expect a full-time preschool that doesn't have its regular programming through the summer to have a camp, and that's exactly what they do. And then lastly, there's also a gymnasium that I mentioned. So that gym, for better or worse, does not have air conditioning. So it is not used in the summer at all because you will be very hot if you attempt to do so. But the rest of the year, it's a nice space, and we have Wonder Spring use it during their school day. And then beyond their school day, we have other community groups that we make the basketball, it's basketball and other things. It also has a small stage. We make the gymnasium available to outside groups for their use. And Michael Moore, who's also with us, is our coordinator for sort of releasing that space to folks other than Wonder Spring, and I can have him describe, if you'd like, who those users tend to be, when they tend to use the gym, anything else you'd like to know. So that's my introduction, and we're happy to use the best of the four of us per topic to answer any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you. So I do just want to point out in the application, there's a series in our zoning code of questions that would need to be addressed through the conditional use application. So that would be for folks looking at the application form. Let me see, Mr. Savrin, do you know what page that would start on? I'm looking
So,
in your findings of fact.
yeah, let's see, summary. So the first,
Looks like starting on page 6.
that's about right, yeah.
Okay. So let me just briefly read those. So, so for Planning Commission members, as you consider any comments or questions that you have about the application, so we'd be looking at the following items. So the one would be that the application would be consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the zoning ordinance and the Haverford Township Comprehensive Plan, to determine that the proposed use will not substantially injure or detract from the use of the neighborhood property or from the character of the neighborhood or the properties adjacent, determining if the proposed use will best serve the interests of the township, the convenience of the community, and public welfare, and to consider the effect of the proposed use upon the logical, efficient, and economical extension of public services and facilities such as public water, sewers, police and fire protection, and public schools, and assure adequate arrangements for sanitation in specific instances. So those are kind of the main things that we're going to be asked and tasked with evaluating in the review.
Sure.
So to that end, I will open it up to Planning Commission questions and comments. So Mr. Channon, would you like to start?
Before I have any questions or comments, it would be helpful to have I know it's in your application, but it would be helpful to hear the timeline, because things, when you talk about, the name doesn't really change, so it's a little confusing to know when it ceases to be a religious institution.
Sure.
When it becomes a private nonprofit.
Sure.
And what were the functions then, and then how do they change?
Sure.
When it becomes, it was a little confusing
Sure.
to understand when it becomes
So,
the current owner. Who's the owner and who's the tenant, and
okay,
those kinds of things.
it is confusing. It took me a lot of work to get it down. So Wonder Spring is the tenant, and they are the operator of the school. The owner of the property is St. Faith Equity LLC. Wonder Spring took over the lease of the property from St. Faith Equity LLC in 2023. And Doug, maybe I'll ask you to come up. I know you know what entity, the entity that was the tenant prior to 2023 was essentially a spin-off of the church itself. Even though the church had left, this was a church-affiliated group that continued to operate its preschool.
And what years?
Doug, do you want to answer that? What years was that group there?
So that took place, that transition from the Episcopal Diocese to St. Faith's Preschool and Kindergarten, which was a nonprofit, occurred in, I believe, 2015. St. Faith Equity then,
Wait, that's a change of ownership?
no, I'm sorry, my apologies. It
Maybe
was,
if you just march through and say the owners change, these are the years of the owners.
Okay, the
and
owners-
These are the years of the tenants.
the only time the ownership changed is when St. Faith's Equity acquired it in 2019. Is the only,
And before that, it was always.
it was owned by the Episcopal Diocese. Is that good?
Thanks.
Anything else along those lines? So that,
When did the basketball court start?
well, I think that there was, Doug, was there a basketball court there during the diocese ownership?
No, there was that was originally the chapel and storage area. And then that was during COVID is when they modified that to a gymnasium. So that was 2022. 2021 into 2022.
Thanks.
Susan, you said they converted it. Actually, you converted it, correct? If you owned it in 2019, you would have been responsible for the conversion.
That's correct.
All right, we'll go down the line. Steve?
I just want to, if you could make sure I got the existing use versus the proposed use.
Sure.
So it's currently like a 2 to 5 year age range, and you currently do the kindergarten enrichment?
That's exactly right.
And
So
then-
2 to 5 is the core programming, and then on top of that, there's kindergarten enrichment, which would take us up to 6 years old.
Got, and it's the proposed use would be kindergarten pre-enrichment as well?
So that, Zakia, is there enrichment before the school day starts, like early care for the kindergartners as of now?
So, not to break up the kindergarten day in too many chunks, but yes, there's before and after school for kindergartners, right? But then there would be before and after school for first graders or second graders, right, as needed. Summer camp for first graders or second graders. And just as a point of clarification, a kindergartner could also be age 6, right? Like you could have your 6th birthday while you're in kindergarten. So that's where the 5 or 6 for those kindergartners comes into play. Just wanted to make sure that was clear. Does that answer your question?
I'm living that live in my life with a 2B
So aren't you
kindergarten.
having
No,
fun?
that's
Can I briefly interject and ask, are we talking about full-day kindergarten or half-day kindergarten?
Half-day kindergarten, right? So the Haverford School District currently has half-day kindergarten. We're the other half. And then, but some of that may not necessitate before school or after school hours, like 7 to 9 or 3 to 6.
Okay, so are some of the new uses then potentially kids that are younger than 2 and pre and post elementary school for older than first grade? Is that a new
Not
use?
young, younger than 2 would be infants and toddlers, right? But yes to the, when you say pre and post, before and after school.
Before and after school care.
Okay,
yes.
want to
Like,
make sure I'm clear.
I guess for the neighbors, like earlier drop off and later pickups, like that 7 to 8 time frame, or like,
So 7 probably, 7 would be the earliest, 6 would be the latest.
okay,
Does that answer that question?
I think so, yeah.
And just as another point of clarification, that's purely based upon family demands, right? So if families need care at 8, we wouldn't open at 7, that kind of thing.
You were talking about elementary grades. I think the question is, what is it now? And then how's that going to change?
Right now, it's only kindergartners. There's no before and after school for first grade through 5th graders currently.
There is before and after for...
Kindergartners currently.
Is
The
there
oldest kids in the building right now are kindergartners.
Is there before and after for the below kindergarten grades as well?
Okay, now that really gets complicated. So let me clarify that. Right now, preschoolers can come for a full day or a half day. There's not essentially before and after school for a preschooler. It's either you come for a half day, which is essentially 5 hours or less, or a full day, which is more than 5 hours. It's not like 7 to 9, and then like it's just either half day or full day. Does that make sense? Okay.
and do you currently have the summer camps, or would that be something new?
So we currently offer summer preschool, right? We'd like to be able to have that for first graders, i.e. the siblings of these kindergartners and preschoolers who are there, or second graders, but not, we have not had that historically. Wonder Spring has not.
Okay, so the summer camps would be something new.
Is there summer preschool right now?
Yes, they've been preschoolers. There's summer programming for preschoolers.
So it's really overall an expansion of age range more than the
Hours.
seasons and hours of the day.
Correct.
In which these expansions would operate are all already operated in
Correct.
just by a narrower age band.
Correct.
I guess what I'm also kind of wondering is then, is it a larger number of kids would be there at like a summer camp? Like if you were a neighbor, instead of, 45 students, you said, if a summer camp, are there now like 60 or 80 kids that'll be getting driven there in the morning?
No. No. So although our current, the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services, our certificate of compliance issued by that entity does offer a capacity in excess of 100 children. I believe it's 117 to be exact. The physical layout of the facility doesn't allow us to serve that many kids in a quality environment. Right, so quality is a Wonder Spring core value. It's our second core value after safety. So we would never be able to actually serve that many kids. Our max would be 70, I would say, based upon, and I'm doing that just based upon how the layout is of the facility. We can't fit that many kids in the classrooms. We can't, like, there's walls, the way it's laid out is just, it cannot occupy that many kids at one time.
How does the summer enrollment tend to compare to the school year enrollment? Is it bigger, about the same?
So, as it has been with preschool age children, our enrollment has remained fairly steady throughout the year. Slight decline, let's say 20% decline over the summer, because there's an increase in vacations and big brothers out of school, so big brothers staying home, or teenage sisters babysitting all summer, or the kids, that kind of thing. But by and large, enrollment remains fairly consistent year round with the ages of children that we currently have. Also, point of clarification, we've only began serving children as young as 2 in September of 2024. Before that, it was only preschool 3 to 5s. So we added spots for 10 2-year-olds. Again, based upon overwhelming demand, we've actually got a waiting list for that room. That answer?
Yep.
That
yeah.
make sense?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
I think that's all I have at the moment.
Lou?
I'm curious, and maybe this is not relevant, but is there a distinction between preschool and nursery school?
Yes.
In the
I'll take that
ordinance,
one.
in the ordinance, or for Wonder Spring in the real world?
Well, how about both?
Okay, let's let Ms. Boone answer first.
So the Pennsylvania Department of Education licenses nursery schools. The Pennsylvania Department of Human Services licenses child care centers. Two separate licenses, both of which we have, but two separate licenses, two separate sets of regulations, two inspections, two of everything. And the nursery school is only for ages 2 to 5. You cannot serve infants or young toddlers. Those are 0 to 1 or 1 to 2. You cannot serve school age on a nursery license, a Department of Education nursery license. Does that make sense?
So within that age range, they're functionally the same purpose?
Exactly what you do with the kids, because they're still 3-year-olds. They're still going to act like 3-year-olds. They don't care who gave you the license. But those are two separate sets of regulations that we would have to follow. Make sense? Okay.
On a much less interesting note, so the operative term for our application is educational institution, because that is the term that is used in the code subsection under which we are applying, which enables us to apply for this conditional use. There are terms elsewhere in the zoning ordinance. I think nursery school may appear elsewhere in the zoning ordinance, but it doesn't plug into the series of sections that are relevant to this.
Thank you.
An educational institution is undefined.
I think one other question at this point, which you may have already outlined. What I was thinking in my mind is, end of the day, what's the sort of maximum parameter that or footprint, figuratively speaking, do you intend to have vis-a-vis where you are now? And I think what I heard you say was that it's not about the activity, but about the age range.
Yes. Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you. Just so you guys know, I live 5 houses down from your property. Okay, so I kind of know a little bit about how you operate and things like that. And I have several questions, and I'd like to go through your recommendations of findings and facts first. In your first paragraph, you say the conditional use approval is you're seeking to legalize the existing use on the real property. Is that to infer that the current use is illegal?
Our position is that no, that is not correct, and that there are several legal theories that would have me conclude that this is a legally non-conforming use by nature of its long-standing existence at the property. As a theory in the alternate, given that the township has communicated with us since about 10 years ago, the religious congregation left the property. They knew what was going on and did not force us, if you will, to walk through this process or issue a violation. They've never issued a violation to this day. So we would also say, as an alternative theory to the legal nonconformity, the township has approved of this use by estoppel. Now, that being said, we're not standing on that and refusing to do what the township wants. But we certainly, because of those concepts, would not admit that there's been any illegal activity at the property.
Okay.
Can I make a correction to that, though? I was not here at the time, but I do have in your property file that a code violation was issued in 2022 for the use of the gymnasium
Okay.
known as the steeple.
Okay,
Okay.
I was not aware
That's
of
okay.
that.
That's okay. I just wanted
yeah.
to make sure everybody knows. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Yes, so I'm going to have Doug confirm. I believe that there was a building permit issued after the religious congregation had vacated the property for renovations. Doug, is that correct?
Yes, when we acquired the property, we had to get the resale certificate, and so it was inspected by, I think, code enforcement at that time in order to get the resale certificate. Following that, there was a series of permits over, since we owned it, in order to make improvements along the way. There was various repairs, updates, heating and air conditioning, roofing, things of that nature, so permits were pulled along the way.
You had permits to convert the church to a gymnasium?
We did pull permits, but that was basically to pull all they did was pull the pews out
Okay.
and sanded the floors.
Jamie, what was the nature of the violation related to the recreation?
There was a code violation issued for the use of the gym space for recreation. So I think it was tied to, from what I can tell, a use and occupancy permit that was submitted in 2022, and the code violation was in response to that. Because it was pretty much adding onto the daycare center that was there an additional use.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to paragraph number 5. I think you need to double check your deed. Actually, that property has 195 feet frontage on Alston Road, and the lot area is 24,375 square feet.
Okay.
Item 16 indicates that the infant program is going to be added. Apparently, it's already been added.
Currently, the youngest child is 2 years. That does not define an infant to my knowledge.
Well, I'm just reading again from the document. It says Wonder Spring intends to add an infant program as well.
Yes, but
Okay.
that's not who's currently there.
Okay, so that infant program is under 2.
Correct. Infants would be under 2.
Okay.
Thanks, Zeke.
Right. Going to paragraph 21, it mentions 11 full-time staff. You said 12 in your opening remarks. And
Yeah.
43 children enrolled, you said 45.
Okay.
And it also says the property may accommodate up to 165 children, or you mentioned it would be only 70 at the most.
So I can speak specifically to our enrollment. It literally can change any day. So for example, instead of 12 teachers, Miss Virginia left, there's 11. We have not hired her replacement. But those are operational discrepancies that, quite frankly, between today and by tomorrow morning when we open, could change. Right, a family could pull, we could enroll a new family. I did not realize it was 165, but that doesn't surprise me. That's as the license capacity because of the large space and I don't know if you're looking at the blueprints, but on the bottom floor. On the ground floor, there's a very large open space, which has a very large capacity, but is not functional as a preschool classroom, right? It's a cafeteria style space. It's just open rooms. There's no walls. So it's not functional as a classroom, but it has a large capacity to hold children. So that's where I got the lower number from, if you understand.
Okay, so apparently there's some number that the state says that you can have to provide
That's
so
your
many
max.
square feet per student.
That's right.
Correct.
Okay, so your intent
40
is,
square feet per
not
child.
to have 175 children.
That is not our
Or
intent.
165. But you mentioned 70 would be a maximum that you could handle?
If I go classroom by classroom, On the bottom floor, there'd be in the kindergarten room, that would be 20, 32.
I'd want to put you on the spot.
I'm going classroom by classroom.
All I'm getting at, if the township were to make a condition that your enrollment would be limited to a certain number, that's something you would consider.
Oh, yes, for sure.
Okay.
We already don't, like, the max capacity that the state allows is already too many to operate a quality program.
Is there?
I hope that's on the record, but that's true.
Does the state have a formula for student to teacher ratio?
Yes, depending on age group. So it's 40 square feet per child. However, and no matter the age of the child, however, the age of the child does mandate the staff-child ratio. Infants is 1-4, 1-year-olds 1-5, 2-year-olds 1-6, 3 to 5-year-olds 1-10, kindergartners 1-12, third graders and up 1-15.
Okay, so whatever those standards are, you intend to comply with them?
100%.
Okay. Of the 11 employees that you have now, you mentioned something about the parking lot on Brookline Boulevard. How many of those teachers park in that parking lot?
Yikes. I will have to get back to you on that. I do not know that offhand how many of them park there on a daily basis.
My guess is 0, but, and the concern is if none of them park there now, chances are any additional employees that end up on this property won't park down there now. It's just that overburden the parking that currently occurs in the neighborhood.
Understood?
The other issue I have, 2 other issues. Number one is, in my opinion, and looking out the way pickup and drop-offs occur, it's kind of disorganized.
Okay.
You have people, before I start that, what caused the township to change the parking restrictions on Alston Road? I mean, for years and years, there was no parking on the east side and unrestricted parking on the west side.
So, you've seen by nature of the violation that Jamie mentioned that before my firm was retained, I'm not a historical expert, and that was before that. But Doug, are you aware of the circumstances under which the township?
I believe it was an ordinance that was passed roughly a year ago, but I think it involved more than just that street. I think it was a generalized modification of parking. It wasn't just that street, is my understanding, but the ordinance was passed, is that about a year ago?
I don't know exactly when an ordinance might have been passed for that, but I do know that our police chief, John Viola, has said that recollections of complaints going back at least 20 years about parking issues, I think peaked with the daycare center arrival and dismissal times. And so it may have been directly in response to that.
I know last year they added a no parking here at the corner on Brookline Boulevard, so that people coming out of Alston Road, turning on the Brookline Boulevard, had a chance to see what's coming from the left-hand direction. All right, so getting back to the drop-off and pick-off. So right now, there's a tendency for people to park on both sides of the street, unload their children, and bring them into school.
Okay.
And in doing that, it leaves one lane of traffic between Sagamore Road and Brookline Boulevard. And people open their doors into the traffic lane. They take their kids out into the traffic lane. If the kids were on the other side of the road, they cross between cars. I think something needs to be done to better organize that pick-up and drop-off situation. And I think the only way that can be done would be to put back the restrictions on that existed on the east side of Alston Road in that block between Sagamore and Brookline Boulevard, which basically was no parking except on Sundays.
Understood.
Is your gymnasium are any of your facilities handicap accessible?
So we don't rent this, but I feel like you can.
Can you get into the gymnasium?
I know.
In
I
a
feel
wheelchair?
like on this side, not through the red door steps, but on the other side, there's a ramp. Is there a ramp there? Like where you come in, but on the right side of the stained glass windows, is there a ramp there?
No, there's
Okay.
it's what's ever existed. I don't know if it's specific.
So as far as a community facility, it's not handicap accessible.
I think we can assume that for now. There's level changes within the building, so if the doors that are essentially directly adjacent to the gymnasium do not have ramps, then that must be the case.
Okay, there was an existing handicap parking spot on Alston Road in front of the church, which is no longer there. That was removed as part of the recent
Okay.
signage along that block.
Okay.
All right, let's talk about the gymnasium. How many, last winter, and I have to tell you, I have a niece whose son played in the league that used that gymnasium. So she was kind enough to share with me the schedule from last December. And this is for a league that was organized by, I guess, the Malvern School or
Malvern League?
Malvern League, yeah.
Yep.
And apparently there's 25 teams in that league. And they play Saturdays and Sundays. They usually play once a week, but sometimes they play twice a week. And they all consist of first graders. It says first grade boys on this schedule. So I have the schedule for weeks 2, 3, and 4, which was the 3 weeks in December. I don't know if there was a fifth week. I assume there was a first week if there was a second week. But basically, St. Faith's basketball court was used anywhere from 6 to 7 times during the weekend, okay? And that's a group of people, and to my knowledge, none of these teams that are in this league are from Haverford Township. I know they're not associated with.
Yeah, I don't think, that's not correct.
Okay.
That's not correct.
If I were to show you the schedule, you could tell me which teams are from Haverford Township?
I know a lot of the people. I could. Yeah,
Mike,
absolutely.
Before, just because, can you introduce yourself?
Sure,
in 3 seconds?
absolutely,
Just-
absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
I'm Michael Moore. I've been a Haverford Township resident for a little over 20 years. I've worked with a lot of the youth groups, volunteered with St. Denis Parish, the Haverford Football Club. I was on their board of governors and served there for probably 3 years. I've coached over at Hilltop Baseball for about 10 years. I've just been involved in youth sports within the community back then and still do today. Just, you know, it's quasi-helpful, hand-helping nature when coaches or teams need assistance.
Okay, thank you. All right, so anyhow, if I were to give you a copy of the schedule, you could tell us which teams were from Haverford Township, which teams weren't.
Yes, so just to clarify, the Malvern League, there's probably 2 or 3 leagues that are predominant in the entire area. Mission 5 and 2, which became We Not Me, the Malvern League, obviously Haverford's Township's own basketball league, Havertown Hoops. All of the teams within Haverford Township play in all of these leagues. It's not just, because it says Malvern, it's not Malvern people, because it says Havertown, it's not Havertown people. It's pretty much everyone, and there's a lot of CYO teams that actually play in these leagues as well, and travel teams from Haverford Township.
Okay, but if it says St. Annie's, I can assume it's from St. Anastasia Parish.
Correct,
Or if it says Springfield, I can assume they're from Springfield Township somewhere.
correct.
Okay. All right, so these teams, I guess their parents, they're first graders, so obviously their parents drop them off and things like that. Does the Does your school give them any directions as to where to park? Or is it just
Yes,
like?
actually, yes, actually we do. The Malvern League does a great job of taking each location and spelling out whether there's parking restrictions, occupancy restrictions, any restrictions. And for us, we mention pick up and drop off around the area, parking down at the parking lot. And if you can't find that, not to, overcrowd the area or, bog down traffic, because we know that that can be an issue. So it's all actually spelt out in a email blast and on their website every season.
And is there anyone who's responsible for enforcing that type of those restrictions?
Usually good communication between the person that runs the Malvern League, which is Kevin McCary, and I usually communicate anything that I see if I happen to be around the area or on the property at any time where something occurs. I communicate it, and then he communicates it to all his coaches and hopes that they abide by the rules or they will no longer be part of the league.
Okay, but it's not like someone's out there making sure that people don't block other people. Traffic coming in doesn't block parking from somebody's driveway or something like that.
No,
like that.
there's
You assume
not.
that people are going to be courteous about that.
We hope and believe that people will be courteous towards other people.
All right, was last year the first year you started the basketball league? Or and got involved in the basketball league?
Has Malvern League been?
No. How long has your gym been used for part of that league? Or
For
any-
Malvern League?
Yeah.
Specifically?
So last year the
No,
first?
it's probably maybe the second or third year. I'd have to double check.
Okay, all right. Did you at any time ever communicate that use to any of the neighbors in the area?
Specifically go around and let people know that
Or
Malvern League's
send them a
there.
letter or put a note in their mailbox or something saying, hey, we're going to start this neat basketball program on Saturdays and Sundays?
No, I do not believe so. But I can say that a lot of the neighbors are in the gym and members of the league.
Okay. And as far as tonight's hearing, did you mention that you were being at the planning commission meeting tonight to present this plan? Did you send a notice out to neighbors?
That Jamie, do you know if this meeting is noticed? I know the Board of Commissioners' ultimate hearing is noticed in various fashions, but as part of our application fee, does the township advertise this planning commission meeting?
No, well, I mean, at the beginning of the year, we do an advertisement of the public meetings that are regularly scheduled, but nothing that would include this as a specific item, correct?
So that would be no.
Okay, would you be willing to maybe have a meeting with the neighbors to present this plan, discuss it with them, and answer
Yes.
their questions
Absolutely.
before the conditional use hearing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have anything else.
Thank you. Kim?
Just a quick question on the life safety plans you included. Were those developed originally for another purpose, or were they developed specifically for this application?
That is a Doug question if I've ever heard one. So come on up, Doug. Sorry, I'm not trying to make light of it.
No, that was as part of the state application. Steve had to prepare the, like all the egress and all the.
Emergency preparedness
Yes,
plan.
that's correct.
You called it life safety.
Yes,
Sorry,
sir.
I'm like,
different building
what's the
code term
life
there.
safety plan? I apologize. Yes, the emergency preparedness plan is a standard inclusion in the application for the certificate of compliance through the Department of Human Services.
Okay, so that was, those drawings were accepted by the state for their purposes?
Correct.
Okay. And were they prepared by a licensed architect, or do you know who prepared those drawings?
When you say licensed architect, we have a firm that we ask to create them.
Okay.
Whether or not that person constitutes a licensed architect,
Most of those firms will have a registered architect
Yep.
on staff.
It was
but-
a professional firm that
Yes.
did it. Okay, I just wondered if it
Yes.
wasn't someone's
Yes.
college daughter or something.
okay, no, absolutely not.
Professional, it was professionally kicked done.
Correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarifications.
I don't have anything else to ask that hasn't been asked already. Thank you.
So I just wanted to get clarification on the recreation use. So, sorry to go back to Jamie, you mentioned, though, the violation was issued for the use of the basketball courts as a recreation use.
So I believe, from what I can tell, I'm sorry, I was not here during this time. So I'm looking at property file paperwork. There was a use and occupancy submitted in January of 2012, or 2022, sorry, 2022. A denial was written for that. It was for the recreation use, as I can tell, only because the daycare center already existed. And the follow-up was to issue a code violation. I'm assuming because that use continued after the use and occupancy was denied.
So to clarify then, has there ever been a permit or a use and occupancy issued by the township for the use of the recreation courts?
No, there has not.
Okay.
I know that this was something the township engaged St. Faith's Equity and Wonder Spring, about before I got here, and it was just sort of an outlying thing, issue that when I started, working with the township solicitor, we kind of provided the guidance to St. Faith's Equity to apply for this conditional use application, which would permit the educational institution, because they had expressed the desire to expand the nursery school, and to apply for the recreational component as an accessory to the educational center itself.
Great, okay, thank you for the clarification. So from what I'm hearing in regards to that, so if the recreation use is an accessory to the educational component.
Yes.
But it does appear as though the recreational facilities are being used for recreation uses that are not associated with, identified, run by, or otherwise kind of controlled by Wonder Spring as the educational institution occupying as the primary use of the property.
Right, and Wonder Spring does use that space occasionally, to be clear, but
Yes.
Otherwise, everything you just said is correct.
Okay.
That's right, yeah.
So can you explain to me then how you are clarifying the use of the recreational courts for non-Wonder Spring recreational activities as an accessory use?
Sure, so I would like to confirm that the township ordinance does not define accessory use, which I can do. I can follow up on that, but regardless, even if it does, there's a ream of case law about what an accessory use means within a zoning ordinance and how it is to be interpreted by the Board of Commissioners. So our position is that those non-Wonder Spring uses of the gym that you just named are consistent with that case law. And that case law basically creates an objective, reasonable person standard. Would not a specific reasonable person, but an objective, reasonable person find or expect a preschool to offer its gym for use by unaffiliated groups when the preschool is not in session? That's ultimately a determination for the Board of Commissioners to make with your advisement. Our position is that, yes, a reasonable person would expect a preschool to make available to some degree its gymnasium space to other groups.
So the use of the recreation space then for the basketball leagues, that is not ever running concurrent with activities of Wonder Spring? So they operate at separate times of the day?
So I want to give you the best answer I can. So accordingly, can any of the three of you define to what extent there might be overlap of Wonder Spring and non-Wonder Spring being there at the same time?
Yeah, the basketball leagues do not run concurrent with the school. Any use that the school has of the gym, it's that time, and anything that's outside of that is when there would be auxiliary uses.
And I'm sorry if you already mentioned it, but when do the basketball leagues normally play in the gym?
Saturday and Sunday.
Okay, and so these are all weekend. And does Wonder Spring offer any weekends? Okay, and the summer camps are also just Monday through Friday?
Correct.
Okay,
Also, I'd like to say that the leagues generally run for a quarter of the year.
okay.
It's not an all year round type deal.
And during what months normally would those be?
It's end of November through middle of February.
Okay,
So
so we're
end of
talking
February.
the winter
The winter, yep.
months mostly?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, did anything else?
There's a general definition of accessory use,
In the code? Okay.
which that applies. There is a definition.
It,
Like to see it, read it, or look at it.
Go ahead, read it. Yeah, I mean, and it would certainly apply. It just is informed by and limited by state case law to the extent the case law is inconsistent with it. But it's relevant. It's relevant.
Accessory use or accessory? Sorry. A use conducted on the same lot as a use conducted on the same lot as and subordinate to a principal use to which it is related, which use is incidental to and customarily found in connection with a particular principal use.
Okay.
Clear as could be, clear as mud.
Yes. Clear.
There's also a definition of accessory building, but I don't think that's what you're.
No, there's no, because we're not changing any of the structures on the property.
It can't exceed 50% of the area of the principal building.
Which I wouldn't believe this space does. Also, it's within the primary building, so I'm not sure that would apply anyway, but.
Okay, Planning Commission, did anything else come up that you wanted to speak on, ask questions that came up during the discussion? Okay, so, go ahead.
So, again, trying to be clear, the 43 students
yeah.
who are there now, that's not all K, that's K and 2 to 5?
They are ages 2 through 5 currently, 2 through 6 currently.
43. If you expand to include elementary, you would expand no more than another 27?
Well,
So your max would then be 70. I
that,
just want
that,
to, or is it apples and oranges?
that would be, I believe, consistent with your
Correct.
comments.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's, that's just us expressing for the moment our belief in what this property can accommodate. It's, as you heard, not mandated by the state or any other regulatory
Understood.
body.
But you're saying you could only accommodate 70 for any classes, whether they're 2 through K or H2 through K, which would be up to 6, or first grade through what? Through 5th, 6th?
So just to give a case scenario, if we were to, in the summertime, eliminate our preschool program, right? Let's say those kids, the kindergartners, they are not coming in the summer and only serve school-age children, let's call that first and second graders, we would foreseeably have a group of 24 children, could be 48 children, in that large space down that I talked about that's wide open, because that's a different use than preschoolers in that space. I'd never put 48 preschoolers there. Does that make sense?
A little bit.
The age of the child determines the use of this, the practical quality use of the space.
And how old would the elementary be? That would be to what grade?
Okay, so first graders would be 6 or 7, second graders 7 or 8, and so forth.
And so forth up to what?
Oh, up to max third grade.
Up to 3rd grade.
The oldest that Wonder Spring would offer summer camp in our current capacity. Let's pray that grows over the years and we go nationwide. But in our current capacity, 3rd grade is as old as we would go in that space.
For summer.
period.
For school.
Correct. Before, I'm trying not to get too technical in the childcare world, but after third grade, the ratios change, the child to staff ratios change, the program quality requirements change. So we would need different outdoor space for fourth graders, fifth graders, sixth graders, and we don't have that. So that's why the third graders will be as old as we would go.
I think we're just trying to get a handle on what do you do now and what are you proposing
Yep,
to
so
change?
what we do now is only through kindergartners, we'd like to add school age care. And for the purposes of this conversation, school age is older than kindergarten, elementary school age children.
Up to third grade.
Up to third grade, correct.
So that would be about 9 students per year, roughly. 3 more years, 27 kids.
Per grade.
Just
Oh.
dividing 27 by 3 and getting 9.
We don't have specific restrictions on, we don't enroll students based upon their grade necessarily. So we might have, let's say we enroll 48 students over the summer. All 48 could be first graders, all 48 could be third graders, if I understood your question. I'm sorry, then please ask it again.
During the school year, you operate a school, K for kindergarten, and you operate a preschool.
Correct?
And the total number of students in the preschool and the kindergarten is 43, more or less.
Correct.
Plus or minus 1 or 2.
I can look at our current
That's okay.
enrollment.
Let's go with 43. So, and then you want to expand that in
Correct.
the future, continuing, are you going earlier? You said earlier years for preschool?
We would like the availability, the option to be able to do that, right? So we don't currently have infants or toddlers on a wait list promising them care because that is not currently a use. We would like to be able to enroll infants if needed in response to community need. We would like to be able to offer summer camp to first, second, and third graders in response to community need.
So the plan, the proposal is to add first, second, and third grades during the regular school year for teaching.
Correct.
Which would add another 27 students, up to 7. That would give you a total of 70. And that 70 would be preschoolers, kindergarten, and first, second, and third.
Correct.
Okay.
Mixed there.
Okay. And then the summer program, same idea.
Correct.
Maximum 70 again.
Correct.
Okay.
Don't go away.
Okay.
Good question.
Yes.
Is that good? All right, go ahead. Andrew.
All right. If you take children, say, for the morning for 3 days a week, or do they have to be?
Right now?
Yeah.
Correct, we do.
So do they count as one of the 43 students that you have?
Okay, so yes, because the way that we currently operate, there could be 40 students in the morning and a different 40 in the afternoon because we could enroll 80 half-day students. Now, I definitely do not know off the top of my head our current enrollment, how many are half-day, how many are full-day, but I can look that up.
Okay, so you may end up actually servicing more than, let's say, a limit of 80 students was set. It's possible that you can end up servicing more than 80 kids.
It could be 160, right? 80 in the morning, 80 in the afternoon, different
all right.
students.
And I assume you have a curriculum you follow for each grade level.
We do, based upon the Pennsylvania Early Learning Standards.
Okay, and do you have, I guess, someone on staff who makes sure that that curriculum is followed?
We do, multiple.
And how do you know that the curriculum is being met?
So WonderSpring uses Creative Curriculum as our implementation tool for the Early Learning Standards. The outcomes of that implementation are measured on what's called Teaching Strategies Gold. That's our commercial tool. It's a formalized assessment of how well the students are meeting the learning objectives.
Okay.
That is done 3 times a year and submitted to the state.
And do you have, on a regular basis or whatever, parent-teachers meetings, if you will?
Absolutely.
You do?
3 times per year
3
when
times.
we submit the outcomes to the state.
Are they done online or in person?
Family preference. So the information is available online, right? Because the teacher has to submit the student's progress into Teaching Strategies Goal, which is an online platform, and then the family can choose to come in and have a conference, or they can choose to have that virtually.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And one other question. You're not going anywhere. A logistical question,
Sure.
I guess. For the kindergarten enrichment that goes on currently, there's probably busing that comes middle of the day, right?
Correct.
Okay. If you were to do the pre and post elementary school care, would there be, if you're doing pre-care, would buses come to the facility to take kids to school? And if you're doing post-care, would buses drop them off from school here? So I guess what I'm asking is there more buses going through the neighborhood at the morning rush hour and then post-school timeframe?
I cannot predict. So what I would expect to happen is if we were to offer extended day hours for kindergartners, right? If you drop your kindergartner off to us at 7 a.m., you go about your day, your kindergartner's got to get to school somehow by 9. We would expect the bus is going to come and pick your kindergartner up and take them to AM kindergarten at 9. Does that make sense? And then drop your child back off to us at noon once the public school kindergarten day was over. Is that what, do I understand what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, as long as we're on buses, these buses that come to Alston and Brookline, are they the full-size school buses, or are they the smaller, not vans, but small school buses?
That is actually a great question over which I have no control. So because the district provides the busing, they determine which buses they decide to send their students on any given day. I can say right now, currently, we have, I believe, 8 kindergartners enrolled, so smaller buses right now based upon the capacity, but that's not something that I can say, oh, this is like our agreement, if you will. They'll use a certain size bus.
When you see the buses come in, are they the big ones or the little ones?
So I'm not seeing the buses because I'm not typically there. I could text Beth really quickly and ask her, but I do not know off the top of my head, because from my own observation, what size buses are showing up on a regular basis.
What are the accommodations that are made for bus drop-off and pickup? Where are they parking? Are they blocking travel lanes? Are they in the on-street parking spaces? Like, where are they coming, and what sort of impact does that have on on-street parking and traffic movements?
So there's the no parking on our side, on the school side of the street.
On Alston?
On Austin, correct, but on the school side of Austin versus the residential, right? So,
15 minutes.
right, so the 15 minutes, right? So that's where the buses pull up, unload the students. Beth's out there. Beth is the director at the Haverford Town Center. Beth is out there, takes the kids in the building, bus pulls off.
And normally, I know Angela spoke to this a little bit, but parents who are driving their personal vehicles and dropping the kids off, are they then parking in that 15-minute parking on side of the street? Is that?
Families are loading and unloading there, yes.
And from your experience and understanding of kind of the flows of traffic, what sort of issues or challenges does that face? Do you hear from parents that they don't have enough space to drop their kids off, during peak demands? Do you hear from them, is this a problem? What are you hearing?
I am hearing, we have quite a few families that walk. So the primary challenge is making sure that then this was our operational problem to solve, but making sure that we did not have pickup and drop off at the same time as the buses were arriving. So we had to make sure that we're telling families, okay, you've got to drop off by 8:45 because the buses are coming. So like that was our internal communication to families in order to prevent that kind of congestion.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
Sorry. Is it fair to say that if you expand your services to the younger and older age groups from what you currently serve, is it fair to say that those spots would likely or reasonably be filled by your current students' siblings? And therefore, while you would be increasing the number of students you serve, you're maintaining or not as drastically increasing the number of cars coming to the site?
Yes, absolutely. In fact, most of the requests are, please, can I drop off this big brother or the little brother? Like that is most of the wait list that we have right now is existing families. So more kids, not more cars.
Okay, planning commission members, any other final thoughts? Okay, and I will just mention again, so I'm looking at the code, and we're going to open it up to public comment in just a second. So we were looking at, just want to get my sections right. So the general standards for conditional uses is going to be in zoning chapter 182-1205, and that was the considerations that I had discussed at the top. So this is consistency with the comprehensive plan and just overall impacts on the neighborhood, the properties, serving the best interests of the township and the public welfare, and then the effect of the use on surrounding infrastructure and, yes. And then specifically, it's in chapter 182, it's section 602, this was the institutional districts. So this is where the conditional use comes into play, so the public or private educational institutions, so this is now section 182-602B2B, would be for the public or private institutions. So this is where the conditional use is coming into play. And then I will also note that accessory uses, so our discussion with the recreational courts, also in section 182-602B4 is for accessory uses, which does include playfields or recreational or fitness facilities in conjunction with a permitted main use. So I do just want to note that the accessory use, that the recreational courts as an accessory use would be a permitted by right use, provided that the educational use is approved as a permitted use by conditional use. Okay. Did that confuse everybody?
Yeah.
Probably.
Could you read the last part of that again?
Okay, so conditional uses, so the educational institution is permitted by conditional use. It is not by itself inherently a by right use, right? So the recreational court as an accessory use is a by right use to a permitted main use. So the fact that the educational use is not yet a permitted main use means that the accessory use as a recreational facility would not be permitted if the conditional use for the educational institution is not approved by the commissioners.
But also as a second requirement, assuming additional use is the recreational use would have to still be an accessory. Have to still meet the requirements for an accessory.
Correct. Yes. Okay. Does that make more sense? Yes.
I agree. And
Yes, okay.
I think that's consistent with the apparent issuance of this violation because we were not registered as an educational use on which the recreational use.
Right. So what this will do then is it will formalize the existing uses of Wonder Spring and the accessory use of the courts, and then additionally the expansion of the educational facility that Wonder Spring is seeking to obtain. So what I would like to just again remind the Planning Commission is that because this is a conditional use, This means that as we're reviewing it and as we're making recommendations to the commissioners, any reasonable condition can be placed upon an approval if approval is given. So we're going to move to public comment now, but I want Planning Commission members to consider if there, when we get to making our recommendation tonight, if there are any conditions that you would want to recommend to the commissioners to include as part of the write-up that we will then provide to them ahead of the hearing next month. Okay, very good. Thank you. We're going to move to public comment now. I'd like to get through public comment and then we can take a break. Is that okay? Okay, public comment. I'm going to start on this side of the room, just for no other reason than I'm looking this way. Is there anybody on this side of the room that would like to make a public comment regarding this conditional use application? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to look to this side of the room. Are there any public comments on this side of the room? Okay, actually seeing none. David had asked me to take a look, so we're just going to read through. Did you have something specifically? Oh, well, this is kind of covering it. Sorry, one moment. Okay. Would anybody like to go ahead and make a motion on behalf of this application right now? And then if there's any conditions that we would like to recommend, we can kind of go through each of them separately. So do I hear a motion on this agenda item for the conditional use application for St. Faith Equity LLC and Wonder Spring?
Okay, can we take a break first?
Sure, yes, okay, all right, we're gonna have to consider our options here. So we're gonna take a 5-minute break. So we'll just go off the record for a few minutes, please. Thank you. All right. I'd like to go ahead and get started again, please. Okay, thank you. If I can have everyone's attention again. So before we left for break, we were looking to make a recommendation on consideration of the conditional use application. So again, this is a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners. So we have a couple of conditions that we would like to consider, but we are actually going to vote on each one individually. So Angela, I believe you wanted to go ahead and start off the motion.
Sure. I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of the conditional use for St. Faith Equity LLC to use their property as proposed in their presentation, subject to the following conditions. First, number one.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Hold on, should we get a second and then go through each of the
yeah, sure.
conditions?
I second.
Okay, thank you. Kim seconds. So we have a list of conditions. We would like to go ahead through each one individually, and then we're going to take a vote on each of these conditions for recommendation to the commissioners. Go ahead.
Okay. Number one, the applicant shall conduct a meeting with interested neighborhood residents to explain the proposed expansion of services at its facility and answer any questions related thereto. The invitees to this meeting shall be those residents who live within 300 feet of the St. Faith's property.
Okay, we're just going to do an aye or nay vote. So all those in favor of that condition, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Unanimous. Next.
Number two, a traffic impact study shall be prepared which compares existing traffic generation, drop-off and pick-off practices and parking demands to those associated with the proposed expansion of services.
Okay, any questions about that one or clarifications? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay?
Thank you. Okay, one nay. That's 6-1.
I actually have a question.
Oh, okay.
In my personal experience, traffic studies can be pretty expensive. Is that something that in this scale is also relatively cost affordable, or is this a burden?
That's a good question. We are not equipped to answer kind of what that cost might be. But Lou, if you wanted to provide an alternate to the traffic study, at the very least, I think the traffic should be evaluated.
Absolutely.
But whether or not that's a full traffic study,
There should be evaluated. I'm just wondering if there's something a little more tailored, but I don't know what that is.
okay. And Angela, you were indicating that you would want a full traffic study.
Well, what I'm looking for is someone to go out there and observe what happens on a daily basis, okay? Now, and then take that and compare it to what it might be based upon the increased enrollment at the facility.
Okay.
So they can see, basically, they can evaluate the drop-off patterns and whether or not they're safe or not. And then they can look at the congestion that might occur during pickup and drop-off. They can look at where people park during the day, and they can extrapolate that information to development, the additional services that are provided.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. So it sounds like this recommendation is not for a full engineered traffic study, but more just an evaluation of the changes to the traffic patterns as a result of the increased use for the property and to make appropriate recommendations for safety and the movement of those vehicles. So does that then change anybody's?
Would it be like a one-time traffic study? I guess my thought is that every year or every school to summer season could be a different traffic dynamic based on changes every year.
I'm suggesting that it's a one-time thing. It doesn't mean the commissioners might come back and say, do one after the expansion's done to see if it really panned out the way you said it would. But I'm not suggesting that.
Just from an enforcement perspective, that would be a challenging thing, I think, to require that frequency of traffic evaluations. It could be, contingent upon if the enrollment increases above this, then it would be triggered. If it increases above this, then it would be triggered at that point for a second. But it looks like as for this particular recommendation, it's just going to be a one-time as part of the conditional use approval process.
Plus it gives the commissioners something to rely on when they evaluate the traffic impacts that might be created by this. They're not listening to one person's testimony or two-person testimony. They have a document prepared by a professional that says this is what we expect.
All right, for the one time, I can go with that.
You sure? Yeah. Okay, so Steve, would you like to change your vote?
Yes.
Okay, so let me just do a quick roll call again for that one. So the traffic study as we've discussed in that context. All in favor? Aye. Okay, that one is unanimous. Thank you. Next one.
That a topographic and boundary survey of the property shall be prepared by a Pennsylvania registered land surveyor to document the extent of existing nonconformities associated with the site as compared to the requirements listed for an allowable use within the institutional zoning district.
And Angela, what would be the purpose for that?
It's my understanding that assuming conditional use is granted for this project, the applicant would have to go to the zoning board to get approval for nonconformities on the site. So they're going to need to be able to document to the zoning board the extent of the nonconformities on the property.
So in essence, you're saying this is in the nature of a technical requirement.
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said, in essence, I'm hearing you say this is in the nature of a technical requirement. It's something they're going to have to do in due course. And so you're just verbalizing it now.
I think it's something they have to do.
Is it appropriate for me to comment?
Not at this time. We're taking the vote, but thank you. So you're of the opinion that they would need a zoning variance for non-conforming uses? Or non-conforming dimensional?
Jamie, you want to chime in on that?
The current institutional district, the lot does not meet the minimum size standards. So there would be a few, at the very least, there would be a few things that may require a zoning relief for the approval of the use there as an educational institution. And it is the township solicitor's opinion that a standard condition of approval kind of always accompanies is the fact that the approved use would either have or would seek the zoning, any zoning relief required.
Okay, so just for clarification, we are not then making the determination through this recommendation that they need zoning relief, but we are just saying that we're requesting essentially that they provide this topographical survey in support of any relief that the township might determine is necessary. Is that okay? Angela, does that kind of capture what you're asking?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Any questions or comments on that? Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Unanimous. Thank you. Next.
Okay, number 4, drop off and pick up of students at the school should be permitted only on the south side of Brookline Boulevard and the west side of Alston Road. The previous parking restrictions, which hadn't been in place along the east side of Alston Road between Brookline Boulevard and Sagamore Road, shall be reinstated.
Any comments or questions?
I have a question. Does that include the variant? Does the question about variances include possibly a parking variance?
No. So the variance would be a dimensional variance.
Parking is
This wouldn't be for parking. It would be for drop off. So this is like a temporary. I mean, this I would defer to the township zoning officer to make the determination if that would be necessary as part of any zoning relief. I don't know that we necessarily need to pinpoint it at this point.
Basically, you have people now parking on both sides of Alston Road, dropping their kids off. And they're opening their doors into this single lane of traffic, which remains. So I'm looking at this as a safety issue. That's the only reason for it.
So Angela, I know you have a much greater context on this. I'm not sure that I'm comfortable at this time making that specific recommendation. I'm more interested in a broader review of traffic safety, but I don't know that I'm personally committed to that recommendation at this point. So if anybody else has any comments,
Yeah, can I just reword that to base the recommendation to basically ask the applicant to, when they go to the Board of Commission, to provide detailed examples of their policies for drop-off and pickup, and also review that with the neighborhood. If you can get neighborhood buy-in on your written policies, present that in detail to the Board of Commission and get approval that way.
so I think that's different enough that that would be a standalone one that we can add to the conditions list. So for now, we're just going to go back to the one that Angelo read. So, so we're going to take a vote on this one specifically. Does anybody need it reread, or you good with this? Okay. So all those in favor then of this condition, please say aye.
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 Nays? Nay?
Okay.
Nay.
Okay, so that was Steve, myself, and Kim were nays for that one. Okay, please continue.
This is number 5. The applicant shall prepare and implement a drop-off and pick-off protocol which fully describes those procedures and shall explain the protocol to those individuals dropping off and picking up students.
Okay, Kim, does that kind of more or less capture what you were?
Yes, I would just like to amend that should also be discussed with the neighborhoods for buy-in.
Okay, thank you. Angelo, do you accept that addition?
Sure.
Okay, great. Any questions, comments on this one? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Any nays? That one's unanimous. Next, please.
Okay, stop bars at 3 locations, crosswalks at 2 locations. Those pavement markings and handicap accessible curb cut ramps at 2 locations shall be added at the intersection of Alston Road and Sagamore Road. Again, the reason for that is to better define and make more safe those people who walk their children to school. There's no crosswalks at that intersection, and there's no stop bars, and there is not a handicap accessible ramp to get across Alston Road from Sagamore Road.
And in the testimony, Ms. Boone did say that there's a number of walkers who bring their children to the site. So is there any comments or questions on that one?
Can I just clarify?
Yes.
The expectation is that the applicant would pay for said site improvements and incur any fees for said improvements?
Yes, unless they convince the township it's their responsibility.
My only concern with that is that those intersections that you list are off of the property. So I'm not sure that there's a ability for us to require off-site improvements for this. So I would say if there was anything that was on the property specifically, but in terms of those community improvements, that is a consideration that this would be those intersections listed would be off-site to the property itself. So with that in mind, are there any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay?
Nay.
Okay, thank you. So that one's 4-3. So that was Lou, myself, Kim, and Vic. Okay. Next.
All right, so this is, I don't know. An employee of the school shall be designated to supervise the drop-off and pick-off operations on a daily basis to ensure that the established protocol is implemented and observed, and that teachers and staff park their vehicles in a location specified in condition 2. I'm sorry, that's a mistake. I originally was suggesting that staff should park in the municipal parking lot, so we'll have to change that. So let me reread that. An employee of the school shall be designated to supervise the drop-off and pick-off operations on a daily basis To ensure that the established protocol is implemented and observed, period.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions on that condition? Seeing none, let's hear the ayes. Aye.
Aye.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not clear. Where is it that the teachers and staff are supposed to park?
That was,
I took that out.
that was struck.
Struck, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry, Lou. Were you an aye for that? Yeah, okay. That one is unanimous then. Did you have something, Steve?
It was going to be a nay.
Oh, you're an A. Okay, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, because they're implementing a protocol in number 2, so I don't know if they need to have a designated person to supervise it as well.
It's been my experience that even though you implement a protocol, there's no one there to supervise it, people won't pay attention to it.
Okay, so for that one, we have 6 ayes and Steve is nay. Did I get the vote right? Okay, thank you. Okay, that one passes. Next.
Use of the facility gymnasium by groups or organizations from outside Haverford Township shall be prohibited.
Okay, comments, questions on that condition? Yeah, so for me personally, I'm not interested in imposing a condition for residency. I'm more interested in just overall use of the recreation site. But the recommendation for this condition is that the users shall be Haverford Township organizations.
Correct.
Okay, so comments, questions?
Well, I'd like to make a comment in that, in my experience with youth sports, there's a lot of inter-community activities, so I'm not sure it's feasible or reasonable to try to parse it out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I understand the intent completely, but just as a resident, a dad involved in this stuff, it's hard to overcomplicate it, and we certainly don't want to discourage any of that, but understand the intent where it's coming from.
Okay, thank you all. So with that in mind, if in favor, please say
You accept adding, or alternatively, that the students at St. Francis be involved in the program, that it be related to the activity of the school directly, in the sense of having students from the school involved.
So use of the facilities gymnasium by individuals associated with the school shall only be permitted? Is that what you're suggesting?
Can you
At a minimum.
clarify which school you mean?
St. Francis.
St. Francis?
No, that's Springfield. St. Faith.
I'm sorry,
St. Faith.
St. Faith. The school.
Wonder Spring.
Yeah, I think they still call it St. Francis. Yes,
It's Wonder Spring.
Wonder Spring.
Okay.
So again, the facility would only be used by groups where one of their members goes to the school there? Is that,
Yes.
okay, that's
Directly
fine.
related to the school.
I'm okay with that.
Okay, so the condition is amended, Angelo, to read that,
Use, I'll give it a shot. Use of the facilities gymnasium shall be restricted to those groups that include a student at St. Faith's School.
okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, we can't accept public comment right now.
Aye.
All those opposed? Nay.
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 Okay, that condition does not
Okay.
pass. Thank you. Next.
You want to put back in your existing 5?
No, I'll leave it go. The total maximum enrollment at the school shall be limited to 80 students.
Okay, any comments or questions on enrollment limitations?
Is
Question
that,
how this works, just for clarification. If at some point the applicant needed to revise that at some point down the road, what would the process be for them? They would have to come back for an additional conditional use?
So, yes, Jamie, back me up here, because I know that you can come in and amend a conditional use up.
You can amend a conditional use application, and if the conditions were to change, they do have to come in, like, and basically do the whole process again. And you can either amend what's already in place if the entity is the same, or it just depends on what the circumstances are that change.
But it would be the full process again, not just
It
paperwork.
is
at
the full process again, yes.
Understood. Thank you.
My understanding of the situation suggests that if such a condition were to be put into place, that this is not correctly defined, because as I heard it, you could have a entirely different group of people in the morning as the afternoon. That doubles the number, and yet you have a numerical cap. So this, to me, is a non-starter.
Thank you, Lou. Any other comments, questions, clarifications?
I would struggle right now, like limiting a business plan. So that's where I'm coming from. But I understand what the intent is on this. I think that if we're approving other conditions, that it sounds like the business is willing to, we would have to work with, around safety, community communication, neighborhood involvement, that gets at some level of satisfaction. So I would struggle to be on board with limiting a business plan.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay. So we are voting on the recommendation for a condition for limiting the capacity to 80 students, you said? Okay. All those,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry, what was the word you used?
Enrollment.
Enrollment. What did I say, capacity? So capacity is that to be then understood at any given time there is a capacity of 80 students? So as in the testimony, if there was to be 80 students in the morning, 80 students in the afternoon, or some combination of 80 then throughout, at any given time, I suppose, is what would be at stake here. Does that change anybody's? Okay. So Angela, do you accept that modification?
Well, we heard testimony that total maximum capacity of the school is 160. So I don't think that capacity is the right word.
Well, that would be based on the state's licensing, based on the square foot area of the facility, but based on the usage of the facility and the business model of the organization, it's almost self-limiting based on what we heard in the testimony.
Usage would be better. Total maximum usage of the school shall be limited.
I don't think that usage is a more descriptive term than capacity.
Basically, we're proposing, the state says 165, and we're saying we want to take it down to 80 to provide better care and less.
Right.
That's what
Yeah. Yep. Okay. All right, so all those in favor?
Of what?
Oh, I'm sorry. The capacity maximum of 80 students.
I don't accept that amendment. You vote on what I wrote, turn it down, and then make a new.
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought you said yes. Okay.
No.
So going back then to the original,
The total maximum enrollment at the school shall be limited to 80 students.
okay, maximum enrollment at the school limited to 80 students. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
All those opposed, please say nay.
Hey.
Nay.
So that was Angelo and David were ayes. The remainder were nays. That recommendation does not pass. Thank you. Next.
Could we propose it with capacity?
Well, let's get through Angelo's list, and then if anyone else has additional conditions that we want to consider, we can add them at the end. Thank you. Go ahead, Angelo.
Off-street parking spaces should be provided for the additional parking demand associated with the expanded uses at the site.
Okay, does anyone have any comments or questions on that recommendation? This is for off-street parking spaces. Do we know, is there even a capacity on the property to add off-street parking spaces?
I don't know. I doubt it,
Okay,
not without taking out the playground.
And it was an eighth of a mile from the public parking.
from the public parking.
Right. Which nobody uses.
I know, okay.
Okay,
I just want to remind you that the recent township library project, its zoning board required the township to provide additional parking for the expansion at the library. I think from a consistency standpoint, we're changing the use and we're expanding the use of a non-conforming building. We should consider the fact that maybe they should provide some type of off-street parking space.
okay. Any other comments or questions on this? Okay,
I almost feel like I don't have enough information at this point, and I wonder if this is something, a parking study, never mind.
so in my opinion, this would be something that would be identified by the zoning officer during a zoning hearing board if it needs zoning relief. I would think that this is better suited for review and consideration during that process as opposed to the conditional use approval.
The purpose of the conditional use approval is to evaluate the impacts on the neighborhood, okay?
Yep.
And parking in public streets in front of private residences is an impact. That's going to be a greater impact than it currently exists, okay? So I think that certainly is something that the Board of Commissioners can consider at their conditional use hearing.
But the recommendation is that they must require
I
additional
didn't say
off-street.
must, I said should be provided.
Should be provided, okay.
If the commissioners feel that they didn't have to provide it, then fine. I'm not saying they shall have to provide it.
Right.
Change the wording to
It
should.
That was the change, okay. Okay. Any additional comments or questions before we take a vote? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Nay?
Nay.
Okay. 2, 4, and the balance again. So again, that was Angelo and David voting in the affirmative. Next, please.
Sewage facilities planning module approval, waiver, or exemption shall be obtained from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Resources for the additional sewage flows generated by the proposed expansion.
Any comments or questions on this proposed condition?
Yeah. I have a question.
So this would be a sewage facilities module. So this essentially is, you typically see it in land development, but the increase in usage would increase the amount of sewage. And so it's an analysis of capacity for the site. It goes to the DEP. It's called a sewage planning module.
So just to clarify here, there's no construction proposed, so therefore the existing facilities are for a specific occupancy, and therefore the sewage meets the original specific occupancy.
Yes, but because this is considered a change in use, it would be evaluated based on the change in use. So the original occupancy was as the original church and whatever daycare facilities the church had operated.
That had a specific amount of sewage going through it, so now we're saying there's a different amount of sewage going through it?
As a change in use.
Understood. Thank you.
Yeah. Angela, could you please repeat?
Sure. A sewage facilities planning module approval, waiver, or exemption shall be obtained from the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection for the additional sewage flows generated by the proposed expansion.
If no other comments or questions, are we ready to take a vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay.
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 Okay, so we have 3 nays. We have Steve, Kim, and Vic. Okay, thank you. Angelo?
Okay, last one. Consideration should be given for the installation of 15-mile-per-hour speed limit signage along the 1200 block of Alston Road for the drop-off and pick-up periods during the day.
And the current speed limit is 25? Are you proposing like a school zone?
The flashing
Not the flashing
sign.
lights,
There's a
just,
sign that says 15-mile-an-hour speed limit, like 8:30 to 9:30 and 4:30 to 5:30, whatever the hours are.
okay. Comments or questions on this?
Is this something that's familiar, like consistent with other daycares? I'm just thinking of other ones in the area. I know there's one at Darby and Ardmore. I don't think has any restrictions on speed limits during drop-offs. I get the intent of what you're going for. I'm just thinking, is this something new for this specific site that's not anywhere else?
I don't know if it is. I would really like it if it was near my daycare, though, because people speed down the Steel Road all the time. So
I actually couldn't hear clearly what the proposed condition is.
Oh, to have a speed limit sign that would be restricted to 15 miles an hour for like peak AM and PM pickup drop-off times.
Do we know what the speed limit is in that?
25 currently, yep. I mean, this is something, it's a township-owned road, so this is some, a sign that could easily be installed and calls attention to the fact that there's these additional activities going on during those times. So this seems a reasonable condition to me. Any comments or questions additionally? If none, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, Steve is nay. Thank you. Do we have any other conditions that the Planning Commission would like to consider?
Yes. What Angelo proposed under his number.
Are you on?
That the total maximum capacity at the school shall be limited to 80 students.
Okay, is that the statement?
At any one time.
Okay, so we have a proposed recommendation for a condition that the capacity of the school be limited to 80 students at any one time. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Any comments or questions on that? If no additional comments, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay. So we had the ayes was Lou, David, and Angelo, and the rest were nays. I do want to recommend another condition of approval, just that any retroactive permits or any other additional permits that would be necessary to come into compliance with all township building code standards and other ordinance requirements be obtained at the time or subsequent to conditional use approval.
Why not before?
Because it would be impractical to seek permits prior to approval of the use itself.
So that would include any question. Would that include any zoning relief? Is that what you're saying?
So in the order that it would likely go, it would go for conditional use approval. If granted approval, then it would need to seek all zoning relief. If all zoning relief is obtained, then building permits would be required.
Would it be okay to say zoning relief and appropriate zoning relief and permits?
We already have a condition that we approved earlier that would cover the zoning relief necessary.
That was what Jamie brought up?
Yes, that was one of Angelo's that we already recommended.
I remember it being raised, but I don't remember it being.
We don't have a condition about
recommended.
zoning approval, zoning relief.
Do we not?
No.
Okay, so
Jamie brought it up, but I don't think Angelo incorporated it.
I thought we did.
Jamie suggested that after this approval, that the township would require the applicant to seek relief from the zoning hearing board. Not a condition of our approval.
Okay, so then the recommendation for the condition would just be The applicant shall obtain any and all zoning approvals and building permit approvals from the township to come into complete compliance with all applicable regulations.
Aye.
Okay, any comments or questions? That the applicant shall obtain any and all zoning approvals and building permits as applicable to come into compliance with all township regulations. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, Kim is nay. Any other conditions we would like to consider?
Just for the record, there's nothing restricting the number of students permitted with the expansion.
We did not make any recommendation tonight that obtained majority to include that as a condition, correct?
Thank you.
So let the record state that we did discuss it, but that we are not passing that recommendation for a condition on to the commissioners. Okay. Anything else for the good of the order, or are we satisfied with our conditions? Thank you all for your patience and your consideration of this. We will draft up our recommendation with all of the conditions that we are recommending, and we will give that to Jamie to share with you folks ahead of the conditional use hearing. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation tonight. Appreciate your time. And
Thank you for your services to the community.
okay, very good. Thank you.
So thank you for the clarity of the application. Laying things out is helpful.
Great.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Okay, are we good? Do we need to take a breather? It's already 9:15, so I want to make sure that we continue on. You guys good? Okay. All right, so our next agenda item is a sketch plan for 2400 Darby Road. The proposed application is for a 5,995 square foot restaurant building with associated parking. The property is located in the C3 Commercial District and is served by public sewer and water. We did receive the sketch plan, and the applicant is Blackwater Falls Trust. Sir, can you please introduce yourself and your project, please?
Hi, yes, I'm Graham Varn with Bowler Engineer. The applicant's.
Could you repeat, please?
Yes, Graham Varn with Bowler Engineering, the applicant's civil engineering consultant. We're going to be presenting on the behalf of Blackwater Falls Trust. I am joined by Mike Geithner with Bowler as well, and Nicole Brotzman with Blackwater Falls Trust. We're here for a sketch plan meeting to discuss the proposed development subject to the application and looking to obtain just as much feedback. And then let me make sure, I think I have it on my end. So, well, thank you. So kind of the project overview, most of you may know this area, but this is between Eagle Road and Darby Road. The property in question is 2400 West Darby Road and Eagle Road. Currently, the applicant is the owner of the site. Its current use is vacant. It was a prior gas station, but today it's vacant. It's currently zoned general commercial C3, and I believe to our plan, if you're looking at this now, plan west, there's a cafe, and then to the north is actually a residential district, R6, right above the alleyway, and then Darby and Eagle Road. So we are proposing a single-story, 5,995 square foot restaurant, retail use permitted by right. It is not to be a convenience store, gas station, anything of that sort. We are currently proposing, let me go to my proposed site for you. Can everyone see that? We are currently proposing retail, like I said, 5,995, potentially 3 to 4 uses within it. There are currently requirements for this use for 30 parking spaces. That would be the requirement now for this use, permitted by right, and we are proposing 30 spaces and 2 ADA spaces. Currently, the access points are as existing. They are on Darby and on Eagle Road. We are proposing to still have those in there. The one on Eagle Road would still be a, as you can see, just we have a, what you call Pork Chop Island, just a right in, right out. And then on the Eagle, sorry, excuse me. And then on Darby.
Sorry, I lost you. Which is?
Yes, sir. So on the bottom portion is on Eagle. And then that is a, due to traffic, trying to keep it a right in, right out. Well, actually, you can use, sorry, pardon me. You can only, leaving the site, take a right out, but you can enter coming in. Does that clarify? Pardon me.
You can turn right to enter off Eagle.
Yeah,
Road.
but PennDOT will have to review, but that's our current proposed.
To turn right off Eagle to enter and to turn right when you're exiting the.
So you would be able to take the left in from Eagle into there, but whenever you are exiting onto Eagle, you can only take a right, is proposed. And then we're still maintaining what is existing on Darby Road at the top currently. Correct. There is a double yellow line, but we'd have to coordinate with PennDOT for egress and ingress. Yes. And that's something we'll coordinate with PennDOT to make sure for access there. And also, we propose to have access on there from the sidewalk to the buildings, just to make sure we have full access. We also have landscape buffers proposed. We want to make sure that we have greenery all around. As you know, currently it's a vacant site, all impervious. We propose to bring that down to 74% impervious, 74.6% impervious, and then adding greenery around. It's currently existing non-conformity, but trying to bring that back into conformity.
74.6 be conforming?
Yes, sir. It's 75 is required. I can currently, open that up to discussion if you like. We're here for sketch, so
Yep.
want to hear your feedback, and then if you'd like to go through anything on the letter or one by one or however you'd like to approach.
Okay, great. I think the letter was, let me just pull that up. So the letter was fairly general. So some of these are kind of site plan requirements, name and address. Obviously, this is a sketch plan, so you haven't gone through full site engineering, so we wouldn't be expecting to be looking at stormwater management plan, water quality, peak rate control, so that would be a future traffic impact study. You mentioned the access, so that would need to be reviewed by PennDOT. I'm just quickly going through Chuck's letter. You mentioned that there was a pedestrian access. Chuck also noted that there does not seem to be a defined pedestrian access.
Yes, currently we would want to have one, on Eagle Road accessing, making sure we comply with that.
Okay. So we have a note in here as well about 10-foot minimum buffer on the northwest side adjacent to the district. Lighting, I'm sure that'll come with future street lights. Sewage facilities planning module or exemption. And so the main thing I think in Chuck's letter that I think the Planning Commission would be interested in discussing is the design standards for the Eagle Road corridor document. So I'm just going to pause here and open it up to my fellow commission members for some initial comments, and we can just have a discussion about that. So if anyone would like to kick it off, who has any strong feelings?
I'll start.
Very good. Kim, go ahead.
General, this, in my opinion, is exactly what we do not need in the township. We do not need more parking lots with buildings in them. We need buildings that are supported. So, first thing is you got to pull it to the street. I understand my comments all probably require some zoning relief. You're trying to do this by right. My understanding is there's a lot of support in the township for being innovative and thinking about what we can really develop here. This site is on the crossroads of Darby and Eagle, which are two major arteries within the township. So developing this site specifically can become a linchpin and is super critical to what the township can develop into. Specifically on this site, you have to the east, you have historic resources. Looking towards how they are situated on their sites and learning from what they did and what they did successfully and bringing that into new development and expanding upon that is what the township needs, in my opinion. The amount of curb cuts you're proposing, and I mean, you even said the word pork chop island, which we don't need that.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to.
Good. Yeah, so Haverford and Havertown have such a great, strong residential fabric. We need to expand that as a township to our main arteries and make those main roads as functional and habitable of an environment as our residential neighborhoods. And this street on Eagle between Darby and Lawrence specifically is, in my opinion, the most prime for this kind of development. You have sites and lots that are sized well for development that's financially viable and can bring a great impact to our community. It can also increase and diversify our tax base, which we all know we need sources of income rather than raising our residential rates. So, I'm going to encourage you with this site to be a little more innovative and think about what really wants to go here. I think there's an opportunity to have a lot more retail than you're showing. If you're looking to develop retail, I think there's an opportunity to get a lot more frontage. And I think there's an opportunity to develop some other uses here to see this site activated every day of the week at different times of the day, not just when casual restaurants are being used. Thank you. Okay, thanks, Kim.
Forward a question. The uses you're suggesting are more retail or residential? Or
Yeah, so-
combined residential and
Yeah,
retail?
it
Or
would-
what
it
is
would-
it you had in mind?
Yeah, it would be mixed use, and that's exactly what those historic buildings across the street are. They have ground floor retail and apartments above. I think that's a great precedent. I don't think it has to look exactly like that, but those have buildings to the property line with retail uses and residential above. I'm not saying it has to be that. I'm just saying we got to be a little more innovative than a parking lot with a building in it. Does that clarify?
And that mixed use is consistent with what the comp plan is considering for this stretch of Eagle Road.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to make some comments?
Sorry, I couldn't hear the last thing that was said.
Oh, that the comprehensive plan recommends mixed use for this area.
And that would be the
I would
draft
say-
comprehensive.
I'm sorry, the draft comprehensive plan.
It's no longer, it's going to be revised, so I don't think we should put forward the draft plan as being kind of what's being considered. It's
I think the draft
going to be
plan,
substantially revised.
I
is
think
my
the draft
understanding.
plan, given the previous date of the comprehensive plan and even the design standards previously referenced, I think the draft plan, while it still is a draft and is being revised, provides a good basis for what the township today has an appetite to see.
I would just say it doesn't have any weight at the moment. Yes, it was ideas were proposed, and some people liked them and some didn't. There was a large township meeting about it, and it's being revised. I don't think we should put too much weight on anything that was in the draft. Other than you might agree with it, and you're entitled absolutely to agree with some ideas.
Okay, thanks, David. Anything else? Anyone else want to go?
What are the 3 uses that you're proposing?
It's currently just restaurant right now, 3 to 4, possibly could go in there, but no end user currently. So
So now it's just a restaurant.
currently the site's vacant, but
No, I know.
proposed,
Your proposal is, you said earlier 3 uses, and I was just clarifying that.
for the size of this building, the site could, 3 to 4, split for strip, areas, multiple, multi-tenant.
Multi-tenant building.
And do you have any conception now of what those tenants would be doing in this building?
Sorry.
Office,
Gotta jump up. Yeah, Mike
restaurant?
Jagger with Bowler. Really, at this point, we're looking at combination retail, restaurant within the building, smaller tenants, cafe, type, anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 square feet to make up the building.
But not residential,
No,
and not office?
no. And I think the concern with although I completely appreciate the comp plan and what's going on, obviously considering moving the building up, I think the concern is the number of variances that's going to be created with that plan. And I know you mentioned the township would be in support of that. The concern there would be obviously, what was noted. So that's something for us. Obviously, we're here for sketch. So obviously the idea is to bring that back, and kind of take a look at it before we kind of move forward. I would note on the access points, you currently have 2 access points on each street today, a total of 4. We're cutting that down to 2. So we're improving the access along the site. You got 100% impervious, which Graham noted to everybody. We're bringing it down to under 75, under what's bringing in the conformance. And then moreover, green on all 4 sides of the site that doesn't exist today. So again, in the eyes of the vision of the township, totally understand that, and what we're trying to do, but obviously we're looking to propose a by right plan in accordance with the current ordinance, and really try to do something here on this property that has been attempted several times, some of which applications were, albeit a little aggressive. The thought here is really to come in something by right and to get something here to kind of beautify the corner as much as possible. Just one comment on Eagle Road with the corridor requirements. We've looked at that. I think that's something we could take under advisement. It's a small stretch on what we're doing, but obviously knowing it's a key corner of the intersection of the town, I think that's something the applicant would consider doing in accordance with the guidelines of the pillars, the piers, and the fencing and the landscaping. So,
You're talking about the aesthetic concerns.
yes, sir.
Lou, Steve, do you have any comments, feedback?
I originally did, but after our colleagues' thorough description of where we are, I just want to echo her comments.
Thank you. Steve, anything to add?
Yeah, just from good comments there. Kind of had different thoughts going into this and kind of perspective at the moment. So I guess just one thought is just access-wise, however you would get in and out, as shown here, it gets really difficult along Eagle Road, making any left into this type property. But for you guys, is there a tree that's getting added off-site or no? Is that just something that's on the sketch? Yeah.
Below Eagle?
Yeah.
No, I believe that's just the existing today,
Oh, okay.
part of the survey, no.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, okay. Nothing else.
Okay. Angela or Vic?
Yeah, a couple things. Design standards are very important. We instituted them on several land development projects along Eagle Road. So I would expect, as a minimum, you would follow those standards. And take a look. We had a previously approved bank for this site. There are significant improvements to the highways. The radius on at the intersection of Darby and Eagle on your corner was enlarged so that that right turn movement can move more freely. There was also some minor adjustments to the curb radius on the church across the street. I have, and also PennDOT restricted the driveway on Darby Road to be right turn in, right turn out. I don't know how you'll ever get a vehicle in there to load, given the configuration of the driveways and the parking areas. I think you need to pay attention to that. Any future plans would have to show turning movements for those delivery vehicles. And then the driveway on Eagle Road, again, PennDOT required that driveway to be located as far away from the intersection as possible.
Vic, you have comments?
No, I concur with what Angelo just said, and I just want to say, from a macro level, I support what Kim also articulated. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, do you have? Sure.
What are the hours proposed for the restaurant, if you know those yet? And I assume it would be with alcohol or BYO?
Not sure at this time, no.
I don't think the intention is to have facilities with alcohol, BYOB. I don't think it's going to be those type of facilities. Hours would be determined at this point. We'll have answers to that when we get to a point of coming in for land development.
Thank you. And where's the trash pickup at present?
It's currently in between the building and the alleyway in the back. So they would access, likely from Darby straight into the trash enclosure and out.
Okay, thank you.
All right, I have a couple of comments. So mainly to echo what Kim says, a one-story multi-tenant, this essentially is just a small strip mall on one of the most primary corners of the township. And this is not what we're looking for in terms of future land development. The siting of the building further away from the intersection really doesn't speak to the kind of streetscape that we're looking to envision in what's otherwise a more historic kind of walkable downtown area. Also, I don't know if you have, the location of the building on the site means that you're locating your entrance closer to the intersection. I recognize that there's probably some setback requirements between the neighboring driveway to your driveway. I'm assuming that was potentially a limitation, which is, can you speak to that? Is there a requirement there?
I'd have to look in that one, but there was also the existing one that is very close to what is that existing today's cafe, and that one was, removed and pushed further away.
The depressed curb cut that's shown is to be removed?
Yes, correct,
Okay.
Yes.
So the other question that I had is, the public alleyway, do you have access into that? Do you have the right to connect into it? Because the neighboring commercial property appears to.
So this plan has been probably looked at over the last 10 to 15 years. And at one point, we had a plan that showed a connection right into the alleyway, because ideally reducing the number of curb cuts. And this property does not have rights to that alleyway. So unfortunately, that's why we have the access point kind of where it is.
Okay. Do you know what the limitation would be, or can you seek approval
We can bring that under advisement, obviously, here for sketch and take a look at it. Ideally, I mean, that's where we wanted to be to begin with. To get further away from the intersection because of the queuing at the intersection. So completely agree with that sentiment. That's something we can take a look at and come back with.
Okay, because I appreciate that you're reducing the impervious cover, but at the same time, what we're doing is we're creating an isolated pad site for a strip mall at a key intersection. So this is development that we had 50 years ago, and this is not innovative development that we're seeking to establish now. It's a one-story structure. I don't know if you're envisioning a flat roof or a gable or what, but even still, it just doesn't have the building bulk that we're looking for to create a walkable streetscape that's consistent with that historic character of the surrounding neighborhood. The curb cuts are really uncomfortable with the proximity to the intersection and how busy that intersection is. If there's any way that you can consolidate curb cuts have a shared access even with the neighboring property and have a through cut through some sort of shared access with the adjoining property or through the alleyway in the back. And I just think that the orientation of the building lateral, kind of more parallel to Darby, again, and push it back from the roadway just does a really big disservice to that site. It's just a sea of asphalt parking. I know you're putting in landscaping, but all you're doing is just segregating this parcel from the rest of the commercial area. It doesn't create a cohesive strip at all. And it's just really antithetical to what we're trying to achieve through, the efforts that we're making in our comprehensive plan. I know it's still a draft, but this doesn't meet what we're looking, and I feel like there's a lot of opportunities to improve the site to produce something that's going to look better, feel better, be safer, and provide something that we're really happy and proud to have in our township.
Understood. That's why we're here. That's why the applicant decided to move forward with a sketch plan to kind of get feedback. Obviously, we're here. And my question here is not to be any more than a question, but are there requirements in the ordinance in regards to minimum setbacks? You've got, pushing the building up against the street, or is everything we're talking about, if the applicant would consider moving everything up to the street and doing all that, creating possible, I assume it would be variances. There's no ordinance in place that would, any kind of text in the ordinance that speaks to pushing the building up against the road. I'm just curious on path. Ideally, we'd like to avoid, going to an extra board if we can, just from a process standpoint. So the goal here was to kind of be by right, and I think we are. Ideally, it's not in line with what your vision is. I completely appreciate that, especially the location of where the site is. So I think that's something I think we need to kind of understand better. If we are going to go the route of moving the building up to the corner, have a slew of variances, have some friends come out at the hearing for that, really kind of understanding what does that support look like from the township if we're going to go that route of doing that. So again, we'll bring that back, but probably there's a follow-up, maybe a follow-up sketch meeting or more so maybe some additional meetings with the township on that.
And are you aware that we're also embarking on a comprehensive rewrite of our zoning code?
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Okay, so Jamie can coordinate with you on that. Again, we're not at a place with that to be able to say for certainty what may or may not change in the code, but that is something that we're looking at. Again, because we have a draft comp plan that's going to be adopted sometime in the near future, and then on the heels of that, looking at doing a full zoning rewrite to change the zoning code so that we actually write code that achieves the goal that we're looking for. So potentially something like what we're hoping for is going to be more of a by right plan. Obviously, it's not in place right now, and I respect that your client has timelines that they're looking at as well. So I think more or less unanimously, this generally is not what we're looking for. And I do want to make sure that we get public comment in here, because I think most of you are here for this. Is that probably correct? Okay, and I appreciate your patience. I know this has been a long meeting. So if there's no other comments from the Planning Commission, I would like to open it up to the public. So anything else?
I'll wait.
You sure? Okay. Anyone else?
think so.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, so public comment. Yes, sir. Come on up. So come on up to the podium and please introduce yourself, your name, and your address for the record.
My name is Tom Rogers. I live at 44 East Clearfield Road in Havertown, a couple blocks up the street. I'm showing my age. I've been a resident since 1952 on Darby Road. A lot has changed since then. When I was growing up, going to Oakmont, that was a car dealership. Then it became the Gulf Station. The existing curb cuts that are shown, two of which are going to be removed, date back to when it was the Gulf Station. There's significant changes in the density of use of both Eagle Road and Darby Road. In a good way, this proposed sketch plan does not use the alleyway, as was just spoken about. Since Nudies became operational, there's cars making left and rights out of that driveway all the time. they have to make a left, they've got to cross a lane of traffic, and it's only exacerbated the problems along Darby Road. Some of you have already pointed out, and I wholeheartedly agree, that the proposed curb cut on Eagle Road, which will be in the jurisdiction of PennDOT, is a right turn only exit, but it is crazy to have a left turn in. Already, traffic backs up, the queue goes back, sometimes as far back as Nudies, in order to make a left. And now you're going to have other people not just turning left onto Darby Road, but you've got them coming into the site. The second curb cut was also closer up to the corner. That's gone. But now you've taken the alleyway, ingress and egress, and you've added a new, where the existing curb cut is closer to there. At best, or at worst, depending on how you look at it, that should be a right turn only. No one should be able to make a left turn out of there onto Darby Road. Anybody, especially early in the morning during school days, the traffic backs up past Hearst. It goes up maybe as far as Colfax sometimes, 2 or 3 streets up. So the density of use, the fact that when Nudies went online, it increased dramatically the ins and outs of all those ingress and egress points. And it's just, it's as a resident, it's sometimes a nightmare to drive through there, and it's dangerous. It was only, I guess, a few months ago that a car coming northwest up Eagle Darby Road slammed into Katz's Pharmacy. And that's a function of the fact that there's a left turn lane and you've got to squiggle through there to make that turn. So anything and everything that can be done to better handle the ingress and egress is really necessary. The place right now is an eyesore. It's an embarrassment to the township. It's a staging area for the construction at the Superfund site. Sometimes there's screens up, sometimes there's not. Something needs to be done with it. Something needs to be done with it soon. And I appreciate the applicant's good faith effort here to try to do something that makes sense. But I just don't think as a resident it hits the mark. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comment. Anybody else would like to speak? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Susan Maxwell. I live at 17 West Hillcrest Avenue. If you look at the site, the little upper left-hand corner, the square and the rectangle, that's the back end of my property. That rectangle is my garage, and my only way in and out is the alleyway. And Darby Road in the morning is horrendous, and coming home later in the afternoon to make a left into the alleyway, I can sometimes wait, and people behind me are honking and honking. So yes, it is an eyesore. It has been for many years. I certainly want something much more aesthetically pleasing than a lot of gravel there. Not sure that this is exactly what it should be. I worry about increased traffic. I know that Eagle Road can get backed up starting at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, down 2 or 3 blocks, and the other direction can be backed up as far as almost St. Denis. So it is a major traffic area. I'm glad that this plan itself does not permit any access into the alleyway. It's enough with Nudies being there. And if there's a restaurant, we would worry about, is it going to be a grab and go? Of which there's a Wawa down the block, there's Bachella's down the block, there's a 7-Eleven a little further down. Is it going to be seating? What are the hours going to be? What's the lighting going to be, as it is a residential area right above that? So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much for your comment. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is John Drone. I'm board president for Discover Haverford. As many of you know, Discover Haverford is a 501c3 nonprofit organization whose mission is to stimulate commercial district revitalization, promote economic vitality within Haverford Township. Our work has always been focused on creating more attractive, walkable, and safe business districts that enhance the character, charm, and quality of life in our community. Our organization has worked particularly hard at revitalizing the Oakmont district around Darby and Eagle Roads, and we're always very interested in what will happen with the 2400 Darby property. There was one proposal that was brought by Mr. Bronsman and Blackwater Falls Trust to the zoning commission, or zoning hearing board, which we opposed. That was to put in a gas station and convenience store. We didn't feel that that really suited the flavor of the neighborhood or the vision that the township wanted to see for that area. In this case, we're generally welcoming the efforts of Mr. Bronsman and Blackwater Falls Trust to seek a use of this property that's consistent with the zoning codes, recognizing that they probably will change, but also is something that would improve the overall attractiveness of the and economic vitality of the district. And I think I'll be a little bit controversial here. I appreciate everything that's been said, and we're very strong supporters of the comprehensive plan and the vision that's laid out in the comprehensive plan. And so from an ideal perspective, we would like to see exactly what you've described of that mixed use, upper level residential, lower level commercial. But then thinking practically, what can fit in that area? If you kind of build up and you do have that additional residential on upper floors, then you need extra parking. Will that parking fit into this area where they really have just met the requirements? And perhaps those requirements will change with some of the zoning changes. But right now, certainly a gas station and convenience store was a bad idea. That would increase traffic quite dramatically. Depending on what we would bring into this, property, we could have something between, the traffic that is, brought in by a gas station convenience store and the very minimal traffic that's brought in by an empty lot that's a staging area for a super fund. That we don't want to have as our kind of standard status quo for the next 5-10 years. We need to kind of think about what's going to go there, what can go there, and then how to manage the safety. And, I think the ideal that's envisioned, the comprehensive plan, I think would work if somebody bought up that property, Nudies, and maybe the next property beside it, and was able to have like a large parcel of land for development. But I'm not sure that that's realistic in the near future. So, I think we ought to have some degree of leeway to create something there that is, that where the owners of the property can get what they need, because right now they're sort of sitting on something that's not commercially viable. The township really needs something to go there because it is really an embarrassment to the township. But then we also have to consider the safety. And one of the things that we were thinking about within Discover Haverford is, we could have something there. And I agree fully that we don't want a parking lot sitting on that corner. But one of the things in the comprehensive plan, the last draft that was available, was to have buildings up close to the sidewalks and parking lots behind. And in this case, actually, I could envision moving that building up close to the sidewalk so that it's very walkable. People can kind of walk from the neighborhood down, visit whatever store or whatever restaurant, and the parking kind of goes in the side. And that would have like a couple of benefits. It would be more consistent with the comprehensive plan. You could design a building that is a little bit more attractive for that corner, that, kind of doesn't just, expose a parking lot on a major intersection within our township. And then have it, as I say, easily accessible. And then if you move the parking lot over to the other side, that moves that entrance on Eagle Road, entrance or exit, further away from the curb, again, increasing safety. And then, one thing that we could do as an organization, we work very closely with the township. We could strongly advocate for when the Safe Streets program gets implemented, really work to make this corner a priority. But I think, as I say, something should happen here, and I don't think we really have the space allotted to kind of have the full-blown innovative program that we'd like to see, unless somebody was able to buy out, all 3 lots. So I think our recommendation would be to consider the proposal that's being put forward. The devil is in the details of what sort of businesses would go in there. But one of the things that Discover Haverford does is we really work we've developed a lot of business recruitment materials. We work to actively recruit, we also do surveys around the community to see what kind of businesses people would like. And we can actively, as the space is being developed, we could be seeking the appropriate type of tenants to come in that would, create a viable business, stimulate more revenue, tax revenue for the township, as well as, being not so busy that, it creates safety hazards. So, I think really we ought to kind of find some kind of compromise between the ideal that's laid out in the comprehensive plan and the reality that we have now, which is a parking lot that services a Superfund site. So thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like to make a public comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Mary Howard, 2601 Hearst Terrace, right on the right there. I'd just like to piggyback and agree with what everyone else said. And first, I'd like to commend you on your points regarding what we're looking for in this township. I was very involved with that very early on. When I look at this plan, I see a lot of danger. And I think the one thing we're talking about is not only our community and how we want to live. We have children, and if you not just a traffic study, let's do a people study. How many children walk to school, leave school, go to the Y, that walk up and down here all day long? It's already really dangerous. The curb cuts in and out. You come down Darby Road, you make a right to Tom's Point, and somebody else is making a left. Okay, it's only a matter of time before a pedestrian's killed now. I mean, it almost happened twice at Katz. You could look at this, and I don't know how to read these plans, but I see a big parking lot, and if you have a restaurant, and I'm gonna put that in quotes, that these kids are walking through this parking lot, and if you do the greenery and the boundaries, they have to walk through a curb cut to get in. So I'd like to ask, what's the definition of a restaurant? Is it a store with a couple tables they put outside?
I think someone has the ordinance over here.
No, what your plan is.
It's restaurants in the ordinance, so.
Because like we have restaurants like Braccicelli's, and then we have, which is a little convenience store with tables. And then we have, beautiful big restaurants that are actually the definition of a restaurant. So do you have any I'll ask the owner, do you have any tenants lined up that are interested in the property right now? So there's no tenants that are interested in leasing this space?
Well, typically, we would have a plan, have an understanding of can we get through an approval process before you can start to propose to a tenant. And get serious traction.
But you've done some studies. You have to figure out that there's
The owner
a
has
need.
looked at some. The owner wouldn't have contacted us that put
Sure.
a plan together and come to township. There wasn't some investigation.
Right, 'cause
We're
it's
not-
smart
We're not
business.
here at liberty to kind of talk about who those tenants would be.
So I guess I'm more concerned with the definition of what a restaurant is.
Yeah,
yeah.
if just real quickly, as they were saying, this is a sketch plan. There is no defined tenant at this point in time. But if and when we get to a land development plan with this or a revised proposal, then if there is a tenant, it would have to meet, there would be a use and occupancy permit, so that typically comes sort of later in the process. So you go through the land development where you're looking at the building, the setback, the parking, the traffic studies, the lighting, the landscaping, all the stormwater management, all of those things. And then whatever tenant would come into the building would have to meet whatever the use requirements would be under the zoning ordinance. And so that would be kind of through the permitting process. So
Okay.
if it's a sit-down restaurant, there's certain requirements that would have to be met based on what the zoning would allow in this district. If it's a convenience store, if it's here we go. And we do have definitions in our zoning ordinance. So fast food restaurants, drive-in restaurants, a standard restaurant, and a takeout restaurant. So whatever.
Would they all be by right in that space?
I don't know. Did you look at, you were nodding yes. We would have to confirm what the actual zoning would allow. And again, as I had mentioned, we are looking at doing a comprehensive zoning rewrite. So depending what zoning ordinance in effect at the time they come in with the land development,
So if they propose a full land development before we make any modifications to the zoning, they have what's called a vested development right to develop that property and have a use in that property that would be permitted at the time they come in for that land development. This is a sketch plan, so this is a less formal stage in the process before they come in for a full land development,
I see.
if that's helpful.
No, it's very helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to make a public comment? Okay, I see no other hands. David, you said you had additional comments?
I have to say, even though we don't have an official speaker, we do have a spirit in the town. Maggie and others have spoken to. I was just going to suggest, in addition to what people have spoken to, there's always been talk of a town center. And I would just coordinate with Discover Haverford and with the planning office of our township to see what you can come up with.
I totally agree. I think there's a way to be, collaborative here on, within reason. I will say, just from an access standpoint, I completely understand the concerns in the public. There's a piece of property here. It's got to have access, rights to and from the building. What those are, if there's restrictions to be determined. Without access, then we have a property that's unusable. Within a very important part of the town. So ideally, we'd like to kind of get to a good spot that it can be developed, and then obviously, ideally, be representative of the township. How we get there in regards to multiple floors and parking and the zoning code and all that, I think that's got to be completely thought out and collaborative with everybody. And obviously, we want to make sure that the public is on board as much as possible. We need PennDOT, so there's some work to do, for sure. I think the idea tonight of coming in was, provide a sketch plan to get feedback, and I think we clearly got the feedback. So we appreciate that, and I think we'll be in touch. We'll kind of figure out what the next steps are.
Very good. Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time tonight. And thank you to all the residents who came out and stuck through our first item of business for this. So just so you are all aware, if and when this comes through for land development, or if there's an additional sketch plan, just stay tuned to the agendas for the Planning Commission for when this comes back before us, and we appreciate your support and your comments, and we're glad that you're engaged in this process. So thank you very much for coming out tonight.
Where do we find the Planning Commission agenda?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Where would I find the Planning Commission's agenda?
Yes, they're on the township website.
They are on the township website?
Yes.
So we know when the next meeting is.
Yes, so the meetings are always on the second Thursdays of the month. And then the agendas are posted ahead of time on the township website, so you can always just take a peek at what's coming up, and if it's something that's of interest and relevant to your concerns, you're welcome to attend any of the Planning Commission meetings. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Well, as far as getting the certified letter, how soon are we supposed to get that? We just got ours on Monday night.
Right, so the certified letter is sent out by the applicants, not by the township.
But how many days or weeks are we supposed to have that? Because if we didn't,
They are required to send that 10 days prior to this meeting. So send it, I don't know how long the mail may take sometimes.
Yeah, okay. So the zoning ordinance requires that the applicant send that mail 10 days prior to the meeting, the public meeting.
start 10 days before or have it 10 days before?
Like send it, put it in the mail 10 days before. So depending on how fast or slow the post office is.
Does the zoning board have or this hearing, do they have email set up where we shoot an email to everybody that wants to be on an email when they do something dealing with this particular project?
No, unfortunately not. I mean, the Planning Commission, us up here, we're volunteer members, and we provide recommendations. So we review and provide recommendations to the commissioners, but we don't have like an e-blast that you could sign up for. I mean, there's the town, there's your ward commissioners. Some of them will provide information about upcoming meetings and agendas, and the township has a newsletter that you can sign up for information, but there's nothing specifically where you could sign up say, I want to be notified when this particular applicant comes before the planning commission. We don't have that capacity to send out that specific notification.
Okay, another thing too.
I'm sorry, if you have additional questions, can you please come up to the microphone?
My name's Bill Rusden. We are in the one right at the corner, basically, the second one right beside this lady back here. I feel the opposite of him a little bit.
Okay.
As far as a building being put right on the corner, you can't see either. I'm a police officer. You can't see either way. It makes it more dangerous for the corner. If anything was built, I prefer it to be on the driveway. That way, basically, we're not looking at everything, and it's just the opposite. No matter what they do, they're going to have an issue, which really stinks for them. Okay, but hopefully something goes through where it makes people happy, but every which way they go, they're going to have an issue. But I actually hope that the township does something that makes them happy, and something can be done with it, because it'd be a beautiful corner for the township.
Thank you, I appreciate your
All right.
comment.
Thanks.
Okay. Before we close this matter, is there anybody else who would like to make a comment? Yes, ma'am. Yes.
You mentioned the Superfund site stuff being stored at that property. Is that proper use of that property, and is it permitted to be stored there?
Ooh, that's out of our pay grade.
It's pretty unsightly, and as Tom mentioned, there's screens up and screens down, and I'm sure they're getting rent from somebody to store that stuff, but I was wondering if that is the permitted use of that land.
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if Chuck or Jamie would have that answer. That might be something that you want to just follow up with the township on. That's.
I'm not going to follow, because I don't even know where to go. So maybe I'm kind of throwing the ball in your court, or is it you, Jamie, that can look into why we're driving and seeing all these big, bins of God only knows what?
There's an agreement with between the EPA with the current landowner for them to store for it to be used as a laydown area. I don't know how it came to be, because it started before my time here. I do know that they actively did try to shield the storage area and had a lot of problems with the winds. And so they have been looking into installing, but they wouldn't really be temporary fences, basically. They need to put in, install actual fences, and then do the mesh to cover it all up. And so I know that we've spoken recently about them doing that, just in response to all the winds and everything. So they were waiting for a certain amount of the winter weather to go through to then be able to do the actual installation of more permanent fencing.
My question is not about whether the EPA is paying the rent and legal use.
I understand, and I was not here for when that arrangement was made. Yeah, I can look into it. Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I'm sorry. Can you please come up?
My name is Julia Brooks. I own the property at 15 West Hillcrest, which intersects with this corner property like a foot. During the zoning board hearings where they were denied the ability to put the gas station in with a convenience store, the owner of the property mentioned on a few occasions that there's contamination in the ground from the prior gas station, or from the gas station that he owned there, and that it's an ongoing cleanup site. And I would like to make sure, or I would like to be assured that that cleanup process is completed, that Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection is certified, and that EPA certifies that the site has been cleaned up properly.
Very good.
Also, I would not like to have them have access or use of the alley, because it's just way too much traffic for the property owners who are in the alley. And I believe I read somewhere in some of the documents that they're proposing Cumberland Farms to use to put the restaurant, but everything that, all the documents that I have read about Cumberland Farms say that they are a convenience store and gas station operators. They're not restaurants. I mean, if you ask your phone through Google, is Cumberland Farms a restaurant? It says absolutely not. It's not a restaurant.
I think what happened was the engineer has done plans for Cumberland Farms, and he took one of his site plans for Cumberland Farms and kind of imposed it on this property. There's a reference to it in his notes, but I don't think it can be implied that this is going to be a Cumberland's Farm, because I agree with you, Cumberland's Farms is a convenience.
Convenience store. I agree.
I'm 100% opposed to
The
having
engineer
a
is trying to
convenience
save
store
some money as far as using
or restaurant.
a site plan that they already have available to him.
I think that. Thanks. I do appreciate that. I think that's all that I had on my mind that wasn't already discussed.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate your comments. So that does raise an important point regarding the any underground storage facilities. Have the storage facilities been removed from the property?
I believe they have. Make a note to kind of check into it.
Great. Thank you. Okay.
There was a plan that was approved for this site for a bank.
Yeah.
The bank made sure that the site was clean before they went through with the project.
Okay.
So
Okay.
The owner actually testified during the zoning hearing that that property is still being cleaned up, that it's been contaminated and being cleaned up for decades.
okay, I stand corrected.
Still in the process.
Well, I think there's a difference between contamination and presence of underground storage tanks. But yes, well,
The tanks are gone, that's correct.
so the tanks are gone, but if there's still any sort of ground contamination, that would be something that we would want the applicant to look into and provide.
There could be monitoring wells on site. I'm sorry, I'm so loose with it, but there could be monitoring wells on site. Before we come back in with any application, we'll have clarity on that.
Great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Any final comments, thoughts? Okay, wonderful. Appreciate your time this evening. We do have one other thing on our agenda. If you would like to stick around, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we will go ahead and get started. If everyone's going to be leaving, I just ask that you reserve any conversation for outside while we continue with our last agenda item. So the final thing that we're going to be discussing tonight, I'm sorry, we have two more things. So we want to just do a brief review and discussion of Township Code. This is the Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance, Chapter 160-5C, related to the dedication of land for recreation. So Angelo wanted to provide us with an overview and we can have a brief discussion. So Angelo?
Okay. Back in 2011, the township adopted this ordinance basically because there was concern about infill development. So they wanted to figure out a way where they could try to control the extent to which infill development occurs. So they adopted an ordinance revision to the SALDO, which basically says that if you're developing a property, you're creating 2 or more building lots, you have to provide recreation space, open space, okay? And there's a formula in the code that says that if you're in the R1 district, 30% of your area has to be dedicated to this open space. And there's different percentages for different zoning districts, okay? But more importantly, I think we're under the impression that we, as the Planning Commission, can make a recommendation as to whether or not we think a project should meet that open space requirement or should they pay a fee in lieu of. There's a provision in the code that says if you don't provide the open space, you can provide a fee in lieu of the open space, and there's a formula for how much that fee is. But when you read the ordinance and read it carefully, it says that before that decision is made, the applicant is supposed to prepare 2 sketch plans and submit them to the Township Board of Commissioners. And the Board of Commissioners is to decide whether or not they want the open space or if they want the fee in lieu of. So that decision as to whether or not they do one or the other really doesn't lie with us or our recommendation. Now, to bring this into a more practical sense, I want to focus on 3 recent land developments that we've done. The first is the Coopertown Elementary School. Okay, in that case, the applicant, the school district, could provide open space, basically all the ball fields they have out there, and could easily satisfy the ordinance requirements for that percentage of open space that they had to provide. The fee in lieu of that would have been like $575,000. So it behooved them to provide that open space. And basically what they do is they identify that open space on a plan, and that basically becomes restricted. They can't build on that open space since it's been reserved as open space. And they only have to do it once. If they come back for another land development, they don't have to do another 30% or whatever the number is. They've already done it. They've satisfied that requirement. Second case is the 4-lot subdivision on Township Line and Park, okay, where the old daycare center was. In that case, the applicant provided a fee in lieu of. Now, if you looked at the area of that property and you took out the percentage of open space, they still could have built 4 lots, okay? Providing that open space didn't create a situation where the township could limit the extent of development on that property. Okay, so they paid the fee in lieu of, and basically their lots were bigger than they have to be, okay? Case number 3 is the one that came in a couple of months ago. The 4-lot subdivision on Sproul Road, okay? In that case, if you look at the numbers, it makes perfect sense to have open space, because with open space taken out of those 4 lots, they'd only end up with 3 lots. So we're kind of achieving the intent of the original ordinance change was to try to limit infill development, okay? Now, the ordinance goes on to say that it doesn't have to be open space that's dedicated to the township. It could be controlled by a homeowners association, or it could be owned on an individual basis. It's just that that part of their lot, they sort of do it that way, is reserved. It's dedicated. It's not dedicated, but it's reserved from development. So there'd be a deed restriction created that says you can't build anything on the back 50 feet of the property. And that's
no one else could use it.
Was that?
But no one else could use it.
And you could use it because you own the property, but you just can't build on it.
Right.
Okay?
But it's
So if
not
you-
that it's open to the public.
No, the public doesn't have to access. It's a private ownership. It says private ownership. So if you have a lot that's wooded and you want to try to create an area on that lot that protects those woods, that's one way of doing it. But the bottom line is, it's not our decision. It's up to the commissioners first. And I don't think we don't follow that procedure the way we should. That anybody coming in that's proposing 2 or more building lots should have to go to the Board of Commissioners first and get that question answered before they come here. That's 10 minutes, I'm done. Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, does anyone have any comments or feedback?
And is Angelo saying that this draft document reflects that? Or I'm lost between what you
That's-
explained, draft document?
That's the existing ordinance.
Existing, okay.
So if you read that carefully, you'll see hopefully what I said is true.
Okay.
So Angelo, what you're suggesting is that we should clarify the code?
No, I think we need to follow the
Or just that you're pointing out the fact that we have this code provision and it is not currently being followed?
Correct. If an applicant comes in here and says they want to pay a fee in lieu of, we have to say, we can't agree with that. You have to go through this process. Here's the process.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So,
I support following adopted written procedures.
very good. So this, I suppose, is more just for our process and so that we can ensure that, Chuck, as we're going through these land developments, we're cognizant of those conditions and we're making sure to follow what the code says in regards to that recommendation.
And I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I think that if it's in the code, we should follow the code.
Don't disagree, but Angelo, just, you know this, that has never been done in the past.
And in my opinion, I don't care.
I understand.
I mean,
I'm
if it's
just
in the
pointing
code, we
pointing
should
out the
follow the
obvious.
code. Otherwise, we get into situations where it really becomes important and someone says, well, you never did it before.
I think
We
that-
set a precedent and then we don't follow up on it. I think it causes problems down the road.
I think this falls into the category of continuous improvement of the performance of the planning commission.
Great. It's a process and procedures matter, recognizing that it hasn't maybe been followed to the letter of the law, but what better time to start than now? So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Okay. Any other comments on the Saldo open space fee in lieu? Okay, final agenda item is the review of minutes. So this would be our Planning Commission meeting minutes of February 13th, 2025. Everyone should have received an email with those. Does anybody have any corrections or comments on the minutes? And if none, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the minutes from February 13th, 2025? David made a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All right, Vic seconds. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, meeting minutes are passed. The time is now 10:15 p.m. May I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Very good. We are adjourned. Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you.